right, guys, welcome back to the Field Notes with Rashad podcast. This podcast episode today is episode 13. This is an episode I did with my new friend Lennon Bright, who lives in New Zealand. If you guys have been following for a while, I have had a small fascination with New Zealand, and I said, how can I just get the most accurate information possible? So I actually reached out to Lennon. He owns a media company over there called Caliber, and he's a hunter. He loves to do backcountry wild hunts in New Zealand. And we talked for almost 2.5 hours. It was a phenomenal episode. I absolutely loved this conversation. It happened a few weeks ago now, so the background's a little bit different, but most of the information is still very relevant. I like to think of this episode as like if you are an American looking to travel to New Zealand, this gives you a lot of information to help kind of dispel the myth of what that historically has kind of looked like. If you go online, you see it just is this super duper expensive thing. It's all high fence ranches, it's all farm raised stag, and that's not the case. They have a tremendous amount of public land, and Linden helps break that kind of down and make this whole process even more accessible. So go ahead and make sure you follow Lennon Bright on Instagram at Lennon Bright, and check out his media company, Caliber Outdoors. They're doing some awesome stuff. He's also a super talented photographer. Great guy. No, seriously, super cool podcast. I really enjoyed doing it. So if you have been enjoying this podcast, you may have noticed we're not monetized. If you want to show support, please consider becoming a member of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers for your state chapter. I am a Missouri Backcountry Hunters and Angler member. Now, when it comes to protecting public lands, these guys are on the front line. This is the forefront. Okay. So this is how you can show some support and help continue to fight the good fight for public lands. And if you're a public land guy, I think you'll love this episode as well, because New Zealand is very rich with public lands, and we got into that conversation deep. The audio on this podcast, it's a little spotty. Him and I are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of miles apart, and we're communicating in real time. And so I think we just are dealing with some technical issues there. I did put subtitles on the video version of this podcast. Not only is he have a pretty thick accent, but I think we were running into some technical difficulties as well. So go ahead and pop this up on YouTube if you're really curious about the information. The subtitles are accurate. I've gone through and fixed a lot of the stuff there. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into the episode. Here, just wanted to give you guys this quick little FaceTime, and here we go. Thanks for watching. So it's called Field Notes with Rashad. And it's mostly just like a hunting podcast, and I'm in some conservation organizations. And so, in America, we have the, what is it called? The North American Wildlife Model of Conservation, because we've almost eradicated at one point in time all of our species. So conservation became a really big deal, and there's each state kind of has its own tags and draw system, and so I try to be really educational with that. And it's not without controversy. Like in my state, people hate the conservation agency, and you can't get online without people just trying to rub their name all through the dirt. And so I try to be very educational, very optimistic, and kind of shed a little bit of light on the situation, and not be so just like emotional about the changes and the stuff. And it's like, hey, there's reasons why we're limiting non-residents in this area, or there's reasons why we're changing this to a draw, or this, that, and the third. Whether that's white-tailed deer, I'm a big waterfowl hunter. Like our quail population has been declining, and now it's back on the upswing. So we're seeing regulation changes there and stuff. And so helping people navigate the complexity of hunting all over North America, because if you essentially draw a line in the middle of the United States, the western half of it has a lot more big game accessibility, whether it's black bear, elk, different types of deer species, mule deer, white-tailed deer, black-tailed deer. And then the eastern half of that is pretty much just white-tailed deer and turkeys, and the occasional black bear mixed in the fall. So I came from the west, moved to like the middle, and then a lot of people here have dreams of going west to hunting different species. And so I try to make that process a little bit easier to understand. It's still very complicated and expensive, but just narrowing that gap, making it a little bit more realistic for people, has is kind of my way of giving back a little bit.
So where do you live now?
I live in Missouri,
Missouri. So that's where is that geographically in the center?
east of center.
East
Yeah,
of center.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So like, like I'm like 9 hours from Texas. No, actually, I could be in
Yeah,
Texas
yeah,
fast
yeah.
sooner than that. I could be in Texas in 6 hours. Um, and then
Texas is southern and
Yep,
south.
right at the
Yeah.
pretty much the bottom. But I came from Oregon, which was on the West Coast up north, and really, really great game over there. Like the fishing's awesome, the hunting is awesome. There's so many different species and whatnot, but the politics are terrible. It's like you have people who want to eradicate hunting and like limit fishing dramatically, not because of the lack of resources. It's more like politically sort of ideologically driven, which
Mhm.
somewhat problematic. Do you guys kind of have like those anti-hunter types in New Zealand?
I was gonna say, as much as our system is very like, and I guess, free compared to the US, we have all the same problems. It's
Uh,
quite funny. Like even with like a very unregulated system like ours, we still have the same issues.
hmm.
I just feel like it's a bit less. I don't know. It's hard to say because I guess we do have like a political like in New Zealand. It's just a bit less like I don't know. I don't think people get like as emotional, you know. But they get behind who they support. Kiwis are just pretty chill, you know.
Hmm.
Like I see some of the stuff from over there with the political things, and I'm like, man, really divided. Whereas here, like, yes, we could be at opposing views. Like here where I live, it's very, what you would call conservative and a lot of outdoors hunting people. Then you also have, hard out lefties that live there. So it's like, but I feel like it's not like like butt heads and including friends. You're just like, oh, we just think differently.
Yeah,
So it's all, I feel like all of those issues are pretty universal no matter where you go in the world. No matter how your system is set up.
it's
Like I
more of
said,
like a
ours is
it's like a
very,
human condition more than anything
mm,
almost.
yeah,
Where do you live?
100%.
Are you in North Island or South Island?
So I grew up in the far north, so the very top of the North Island, and now I live in the far south. I live in a place called Wanaka, which is kind of one of the I guess from a person from the States' view, it's sort of like a hunting mecca because this area there's a lot of outfitters here. So a lot of people from the States come here to Wanaka specifically every season. So we're sort of, if you look at the South Island, we're sort of in the lower third, but we're right in the center. So we're in the mountains where I am. Wanaka's a really, it's kind of a boom town. It's
Hmm.
growing, like we've been back here for 10 years and it's more than doubled in population. It's gone from this tiny little town over the hill from Queenstown, which Queenstown is like the tourist hub of New Zealand. So now it's growing where it's going to be bigger than that because
Hmm.
it's just booming. And yeah, I think it's one of the only places in New Zealand that has like what you call like a semi-continental kind of climate because we're not coastal. We're in the center of the island. New Zealand's super small, obviously, like geographically, but we're sort of, uh, it's similar to places in the States where we have like the west coast of the South Island on this side, which is just like thick, lush bush. It's the wettest part of the country. Then you have the Southern Alps that run up the centre. And we're basically on the eastern side of that, and we are the driest part of New Zealand. So you've got the two. I think there's places like on the west coast of the states that are very similar.
Yeah, it kind of
We have
reminds me
two
of when
different
uh,
climates.
it reminds me when I was in Hawaii. I was on the Big Island, and if you go, yeah, to the west side of it, it's just like raining half of the day. It's
Mhm.
super jungly, and then you go way up high over the mountain over this big pass, and that's where all the game is. You see goats and sheep and all sorts of upland and whatnot. And then you go back down the other side, a little bit more temperate, a little bit drier, and that's where like all of the touristy stuff is on that
Yeah,
semi drier
yeah.
side.
It's
It
very
was
similar here.
it's islands, there's something weird about them like that.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert, but
Oh, it all has off weather. The majority of our weather comes from the southwest or the west. So it hits the west coast as it comes in, but it doesn't push over the belts. Yeah. So the
okay,
west
yeah.
coast, like I said, it's the least populated in the wettest part of New Zealand because all the weather hits it, it rains a lot. But often where I am in Wellington, what we have a saying here where we don't count rain until it's in the bucket. Because even though the west coast is right there, it's an hour away or whatever, an hour away, the rain that's forecast doesn't get to us because we're in this sort of like little anomaly. It's yeah,
That must be
it's a
nice,
great
actually.
place to live. But yeah, so a lot of the big like outfitters that a lot of the US people come over to hunt with are based out here. Like one of the bigger ones would be Venator. They're sort of very high end operation. But they're based here. Um, and then we do a bunch like with the filming side with our caliber thing. We work with a bunch of clients. So we sort of work with all the different outfitters, and they're just popping up like crazy. So the numbers of people from the state. I mean, what do they call you? Can't call you Yanks. That's offensive.
Well, I live
Yes.
kind of in the south, so we have we had this a breaking point in the Civil War, and it's called the Mason-Dixon line. I live south of the Mason-Dixon line, so you don't want to run around calling people Yankees where I live. But if you went south to me into a place like Arkansas, and you ask them what I am, I'm a Yankee to them, right? So yeah, and then but more nowadays people identify with their sort of political sort of alignment, but I kind of I just we're all Americans the way I see it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. My business partner slash mate Jason, he's actually from Idaho originally. We call him honorary Kiwi because he's married to a Kiwi lady, and he's been here for like 20 years or something. So
Where did
you
the
know,
Kiwi
you don't
thing
know
come
any
from?
different.
What's that all about?
Kiwis, it's one of our native birds. It's like a little flightless bird that we have. It's the only place in the world you find them, like many of our native birds here. But yeah, it's like our national bird. So I guess that's just what people call us.
Crazy.
Kiwis. I don't know, New Zealanders, bloody whatever, but that's just sort of what we're known as. And you travel around, like, I travel all around the world when I was in my 20s. And people love the, like, you meet people and they're like, hey, it's like this, New Zealand's like this mythical place to some people.
Yeah.
Oh, like one time struggles with this stuff, and they're like, what? That, like, what? So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's, I guess for people that haven't been here, it's like, I don't know, they see it as like things like Lord of the Rings and all that stuff that's sort of blowing it up.
And that's
They
kind of
see
what
it
I was
as
going
that.
to
And
say.
it's like, I just couldn't make any people. I'm like,
Yeah.
I was kind of like, I met a few people that were like, mate, they were like, fucking on the idea that they met someone from here, and I'm like, okay.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. It's like I've been talking about New Zealand a lot more on the podcast and putting out clips and
Yeah,
stuff. And to the uninitiated, they all just think Lord of the Rings.
yeah.
And
Yeah, it's
I'm like,
definitely one of our most famous things,
and
for
honestly,
sure.
I
Have you
was,
been down here?
was that?
Have you been yet?
No, not yet. It's close though. So
Yeah,
that's kind of why I
definitely for a
wanted to,
trip.
that's why I wanted to talk to you is like, getting a little bit, essentially zooming in more on the big goal of like coming to New Zealand, hunting. I have my priority species, right? There's different ones that, would like, obviously everybody wants to do the roar, right? And get a nice stag. But I've got a particular fascination with goats and sheep. So, the tahr obviously is very enticing as well. But even, a chamois, and like I've heard that there's great duck hunting and upland hunting. I'm like, man, I could spend 90 days there just going all over the place, like having an absolute ball. Um, so like I was going to
Well,
ask you in that south of North Island where you live, is that a good hunting spot, or are you guys traveling? Because everybody talks kind of about South Island and the real rainforesty stuff down there, and then you hear about a lot of like the private ranch stuff. North Island. Are you guys getting into like wild game where you're at, or are you traveling a lot to get into that?
so where I live in Monaco is, like I said, it's in the mountains. I can literally drive half an hour down the road and walk into some public land and shoot a 12-point stag. But like on the stag front, I go for that, excuse me, is known as sort of the premier herd that got introduced to New Zealand. Like we just went out last weekend and saw a few good ones, but there's two different types of hunting here. There's what you just said, the outfitting side, which a lot of that is on private stations. It's still a big country. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's very much sort of hunter who wants to come here, doesn't mind paying large sums of money to get what they want. You know, the outfitter will probably cater to their needs, how much luxury they want, how much fitness they have. As you can imagine, a lot of them don't have a lot. So the outfitters have to work hard to get them on the animals. And then you've got like wilderness hunting, because here we don't have any buildings, we don't have anything, we don't have seasons. You can hunt whatever you want all year round, go for your life, shoot as many as you like. It's unlimited, and that's if you throw it back to the way New Zealand got set up. It was actually originally set up to be a hunter's paradise. The Europeans that came here, they formed what was called acclimatization societies, and their goal was to make New Zealand basically like uh, a hunter's paradise version of Scotland and England and all the European countries they came from. So naturally, they brought over, everything's introduced. Like we have native birds, and I think we have one type of duck, which is the only native mammal. Before that, there was nothing. There was no mammals. So no ungulates, no deer, no big game, nothing. Like none of the little annoying ones that we're trying to get rid of, like stoats and possums and all that. Like everything was introduced for either the fur trade or hunting. So I guess the basis of how this place is set up was based around a giant game park, And comparing the South Island and the North Island, one thing the South Island has is a lot more public land. So here we have, it's called the park conservation. People call it buckland. Then a lot of people like to throw in and be like, well, they don't own it. It's public land. It's for the public, because there's a lot of rules around it. Then at the same time, compared to your system, it's very loose.
Mm-hmm.
So if you hear someone say dockland, that's basically Department of Conservation on public land. And the South Island, it's pretty much the whole west coast of the South Island is public land.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of as you go east, where the terrain gets flatter and a bit more like, I guess, like arable, farmable, there's less and less public land. But the amount of public land on the South Island is a lot more than the North Island, and the population's a lot lower. So in the North Island, you have a larger population of hunters, all hunting specific spots, so naturally it's busier. We're down here, like I said, I can drive half an hour up the road and walk into a piece of public land. There's not a soul anywhere, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
chance of shooting, stag, pony, tahr, whatever, goats, you name it.
Wow.
So I think as Americans coming over here, you have to approach it. What sort of hunting you like doing? Do you like going out, like you say, out west to where was it, Oregon or wherever,
Mm-hmm.
and going on big wilderness trips, and you have like you guys get a tag, for the chance that you might bump into an elk and shoot, because that's kind of what our upland hunting's like.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
Yeah.
if you're happy to pay, you can hit up an outfitter and they'll go, "Hey, I'll come over for a week. We'll get you all for everything," like that, because it's two different systems.
Yeah. And
And that industry is just growing and growing over here. The
oh,
more
I
like
believe it.
in trophy hunting. Yeah.
Yeah. And, we have similar stuff here. We have private ranches, even in all those Western states. And then there's some states who have, high fence ranches that are essentially growing deer and you're killing pets, for the sake of conversation, I am a backcountry wilderness hunter, like slug it out for a week with everything I need on my back, bow hunting and, some of the most rugged places. That's really what blows my skirt back. And so I've seen, a ton of that in New Zealand. And so I'm like, man, to be able to do that more and longer and, you know, even kill some smaller game, like kill some goats to provide food instead of like, oh, I don't have a goat tag. I can't do that. I have to eat this dehydrated bull crap in order to stay. And so, there's been so much, and it's a complicated, it's very open, like you were saying, but it's still kind of like complicated, right? So, because one question I had for you is like, I know that there's like block management kind of reservations you have to make for some parts of that. What's that program really like for the public land?
So certain areas we have limits. I think much like you guys do, a lot of our ballots are based around the rural, so mid-March to mid-April. We had one locally this year, and we only went for 3 days because the weather turned and there was no stags in there, so we pulled out. But like around here, Wanaka specific, there's a whole, it's called the Wanaka Raw Blocks. So you put in, it's free to enter. You put in a application, and if you get lucky, you get drawn a block. Some of the blocks are a waste of time. Some of them, you might shoot the biggest public land Otago stag ever. You just don't know. So the idea with the raw and the raw blocks is more around safety, because it's the time of the year here where, much like the bugle or whatever you call it in the States, a lot of this public land just gets flooded with hunters. And what the raw blocks do is they guarantee you to have that block for yourself for a week or whatever the period is. So you've probably heard of the Fjordland Moppity blocks. They're similar. They I think they're 10 days. And I mean, Fjordland's it's a whole different ballgame when it comes to public land hunting in New Zealand. It's the thickest, wettest, steepest hellhole you've ever hunted in, but there's a potential of shooting what we call a New Zealand wapiti, which is essentially a blend of elk and red stag.
Oh,
They're not purebred elk anymore. So when they got introduced by Teddy Roosevelt, the New president, he actually gifted the elk to New Zealand, and they
interesting.
got released in Fjordland. But over time, due to mismanagement, they bred with red deer. So what we call wapiti or elk, which are only in certain part of Fjordland, which again is balloted for that period, they're kind of a favorite. So when you hear them bugle, it's like a mix between a roar and a bugle. It's like a high pitched roar. It's quite interesting. But they don't get as big, obviously. But yeah, so the ballot systems, ones like that, you have to pay to enter because it's managed by the Field and Property Foundation. But a lot of them, you just pay a small fee, or like, the one it's free and it's local to us. So we always just chuck an application or two in, and you essentially get that block, which is outlined on minutes for a week or 10 days, or, there's some that are like a weekend, a few days. So a lot of the time, like I said, it's around that period, mid-March and mid-April. And then after that, it just goes back to, most of them go back to just being open hunting block. So
Got it.
it's only for a very small period of time
Yeah.
that those ballots sort of take up those bits of land. But
So if a
it's
guy
a
was
good
to
thing for safety.
Right. So if a guy was to go over there and he didn't draw a block, there's still all sorts of other public opportunities. You just might bump into somebody else.
Yeah, there's if you're willing to drive over an island, there's an unlimited amount of, like I said, you could hunt a ballot block here in Monica or not, and you could drive an hour to the west coast and go and walk up a valley. And like a lot of the west coast, obviously, is bushland. And one of the things we have here as ground hunters is we have a thing called the WARO, which stands for Wild Animal Recovery Operation. And it's essentially how the deer industry started here. So one guy, his name was Sir Tim Wallace, he was local to this town actually. He started capturing the wild deer by helicopter back in like the 70s, and then creating deer farms with those wild deer. And it turned into a huge industry. Deer farming in New Zealand is massive, but
Mm-hmm.
that still happens, but it's for meat. So they shoot the deer from helicopters, and then they like trip the meat out and send it to Europe as, wild New Zealand venison or whatever. But as you can imagine, in the open country where it's hunted, they just wipe out everything that moves.
Hmm.
So, like the point that I went into this year during the raw, that was the problem. Straight away, you can tell there's no deer in there. They just get wired, they just get helicopter, but on the West Coast, it's thick with bush. So they can't shoot the deer in the bush. So naturally the deer numbers are a lot higher. So anywhere on the West Coast you go, the deer numbers are going to be up there. You're going to be dealing with weather.
So if a guy is willing to be tough
It's-
and get in there, you're going to have those better opportunities. But if you're just trying to shoot them out in a field and, because for me, it's all about like bow hunting, right? So like Oregon, it's real like rainforesty type of thing. And so it's like you're getting in there, your socks are going to be wet. Hopefully you can get a fire going enough to dry your stuff out at the end of the night and do it again the next day, and there's like no cotton. Everything's got to be wool. So you're not freezing, when your socks do get wet and all that type of stuff. And so that's really cool to hear. So it is really interesting with the Waro program. And I know that there is a lot of deer farming and that, because you can go to a store here and buy elk meat from New Zealand or deer meat, and that's the only way you can buy wild game. If it was from somewhere else, we have a law that prevents the sale of wild game, because that's how we almost lost our deer population a couple hundred years ago, was the meat industry. And so one of the questions I had for you was, as a resident of my state, if I was to go to, say, Montana to hunt elk, Montanans don't like so much when a non-resident comes over there, because they just feel like, oh, there's not enough elk to go around. Montana residents should take priority. What's the sentiment of the Kiwis when like an American comes over there? Are they like, hey, this is great, there's enough for everybody? Or is it like, hey, this is New Zealand, like, maybe a little resistance?
Well, there's a thing here that I call the great divide, which is what we talked about before, where the average Kiwi hunter has your mindset of like hunting to them is it's a slog. You can get out there in the hills, you put in the hard yards, you earn what you shoot, sort of thing. And a lot of those sort of professional Kiwi hunters look at like the trophy hunting side of things. Like I said, like the guided outfitting side. And we sort of, oh, that's not real. There's like this negative thing to it. But if people come over here from other countries and they think like we do, like you say, like wilderness style, walk into the bluff, put in the hard yards, deal with the weather, they do really respect it, because there's so many hunters that come here to hunt, like I said, through outfitters, where they go back to the nice lodge every night and have a catered dinner and a massage. There's so much of that. That doesn't get respect from the average sort of Kiwi hunter, because the average Kiwi hunter, like I said, for us, it's normal to hunt the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
So 900 when like Americans or Aussies or whoever it might be, they come over here, they like rent a car and they just bring their bow and just drive around and go and walk in. Like 90% of Kiwi hunters would be like, yeah, man, like that's awesome. Go hard. Like, and that's because they have the view of a lot of, foreign hunters just going that trophy hunting route. Which again, like I'm not, I have, I'm on both sides of the fence, because I am what I would call a personal Kiwi hunter. I love the adventure. I love the struggle of it, all of that. But then I do filming in the trophy hunting side and do work on that side. So I'm on both sides of the fence.
Right.
Um, so I sort of, at the end of the day, I say to people like, infighting in anything, I think is pretty silly. At the end of the day, everyone is interested in the sport of hunting. So you've sort of got to put I guess your like hunting morals to the side and, okay, well, that's how they do things, and not get all uppity about it. But from what I've seen, when guys come over, guys, gals, whoever it might be, come over and hunt the public land properly, because it is hard, like, especially here in the South Island, like, it's big country, it's steep, it can, they say New Zealand 4 seasons in one day, like the weather can switch like that. A lot of people get caught out here in those situations, but yeah, I think most Kiwi hunters respect the ones who come and do it properly,
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool.
Just the high fence operation, type of deal, just pay the money. And we're seeing that more and more. People just want to come over and like I said, rent a car, bring their bow or their rifle or whatever, and just go cruise around and find some public land, or, link up with people they know here, or give them some intel.
Yeah.
And just go and experience it, which is good. I think it's a great thing.
And so, a lot of like when you hear about Americans going over there, everybody's like, oh, the only way to get to this particular piece of hunting ground is by helicopter. And so, is that kind of more
Mm.
aligned with the outfitter side of things? Or if some guy comes over there and rents a Toyota and he's like, man, I'm just going to drive as far as high as I can and burn boot leather. Or is the helicopter that sort of, it's a kind of a myth over here? Is there a lot of truth to that? It's like, can you get into good hunting without having to buy a heli?
Yeah, you 100% can. And the thing you have to remember on the outfitting side is it's a business. Yeah, it's their job to upsell you and say, hey, yeah, we're going to take the early. It's a huge industry. It's massive. And
Mhm.
people don't realize how big it is. Once you work in it, like we do, you realize like how big it is. Like I said, you think you know all the outfitters and then they just keep fucking up. And there's a reason people are starting to do it. And it's because there's such a big industry there. But no, like if you're willing to put in the effort, and get to where there's, like you say, like Shamia and Palm, where they live is not where humans thrive, on the top of mountains. So if you're willing to put in the line, yeah, I can get to them. You definitely need to helicopter, unless there's some sort of access issues through private land, which we do have that in some spots. But, like if you came here right now, I could send you an hour down the road and say, hey, if you walk to the top of this mountain, you will find a shelter. But
Okay.
you got to
Yeah.
be willing to put in the effort. Like it is hard. Like I did a film with a couple from North Carolina, I think. North
Okay.
Carolina. They
Yeah.
live right on the beach in North Carolina. I think the place is called, their house was literally on the beach.
Hmm.
So it's like they're at sea level, dead flat. And we came over here and hunted chamois and tahr. That's on private land. It's big country. You've got to get up there. And like I jokingly said to them, I said, if you want to hunt a chamois, you have to become the chamois. You've got to climb up there and find the things. They were youngest, pretty fit. They'd been training for it, and by I think by like day four, they were on big store, man. They were on struggle for big time, and I think they were. So, no, even hunting these things on the private land is it's it's still big steep hunting, and you've still got to get up there somehow if you don't,
Hmm.
like you say, do the heli hunting.
Did they
And
get
I
sick
guess
from
that's
the?
another
Did they get sick from the
true.
elevation?
Man, it's not been fun. Most of our mountains around here are under 2,000 meters, so I don't
Hmm.
know what it would be in feet, but I think you just it just wears you out. Like they were
Yeah.
struggling. Like, once we got up a bit higher, like one of the days we were hunting bull tahr up in sort of about 3 hours north of here. We're up at probably 1,400, 1,500 meters, and the air does get a bit thinner, and they were sort of struggling. But we got through the week, and they got what they wanted. Nice Sammy Bug and a good bull tar and also a mini tar as well. But yeah, it's just a different terrain, And I've done ones with guys who live in places like Louisiana. Is it Louisiana? Somewhere that's really flat,
Hmm.
and we're up there hunting tar, and we have these things what we call scree slopes. So it's basically like small rocks. It's just like it's just a big slip. And for us, those are great. We just like bound across them and slide down them and cruise around, and you're in real steep country. And we're up there with these guys, and they were like clinging to, because they were, because their wheeling farm was completely flat. And that's like, what's normal for us? You have to be like, okay, like these guys are out of their depth.
Hmm.
So we sort of have to help them along. That's just two different worlds.
Hmm.
Like, we used for us normal hunting is on the super steep sketchy stuff, and you sort of forget that, like, oh yeah, not everyone does that. And my
Well,
brother was
yeah,
saying, like,
Louisiana. I
you
mean,
just go
it's
sit in a tree.
right.
Enough.
I mean, Louisiana is below sea level for the majority of it, so it's like
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah.
practically underwater. They have like in New Orleans, the big city in Louisiana, they have like all these like pumps and levee systems to keep water out. Otherwise, it would just be underwater all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah, they were well out of their depth. It was a sort of a time where you got to remember, like, oh, yeah, like, what we think is normal isn't normal to everyone. So if you can, and you don't mind clambering up some very steep, rocky, sketchy fit, you can get to where the chamois and Tara are on foot
mhm.
easy enough. It's just going to take fair bit of effort. And you might get lucky. I've shot bull-tailed like in the river flat. So when they come down low at certain times of the year, you're just
Mhm.
cruising along. There's one just walking along one in the loop. So yeah, and yeah, it's two different systems, the outfitting sort of trophy hunting world, where
Mhm.
everything's sort of, you pay for it and it's catered and it's easy. Then you've got like say the more wilderness style hunts, which to me, I think you're going to have a more rewarding adventure if you come down here and, like I said, whether you rent a camper van or a car or whatever, just however you travel around, find some spots on a map and
Yeah.
let's go check that out. Because the thing is, you don't need, like I said, you don't need tags, you don't need anything. You literally go onto the dock website and in about 5 minutes you go open permit. It lasts for a year. It's basically pointless. I don't even know why they bother doing it, to be honest. But
Mhm.
in real life, you can do it like say certain groups. So you shoot 1,000 votes if you want, because they're best here and people hate them. So it's like, it's an open bloody slather to come
Yeah.
and do it for sure.
And that's the big draw of it to me, and the fact too that you're in the southern hemisphere, right? So I could hunt hard all fall here, get my butt on
Mhm.
the plane, head on down to your side, and it's like, oh, the things are just getting kicked off here. And
Yeah, yeah.
I still have to work and make money, of course, but I'm
Mhm,
trying to
mhm.
build my life in a way where I could go spend 30 days there or
Yeah,
20 days
yeah,
and
yeah.
really just cover ground, chase different species, and get into all sorts of good stuff like that. And so no, that's really good intel, man. I really appreciate that. And so I'm kind of curious about your backstory, though. Have you been hunting out in the wilderness a long time? Did you were you like out here? A lot of guys get into it with their dad or their grandfather. Was that you, or did you get into hunting later in life? What's your story?
So the thing about New Zealand is, like I said, the diversity of it. When I grew up in the far north, there's no deer or anything. It's the only part of New Zealand where there's no deer. I mean, there is, but it's sort of separate. They try and keep away from like, because they were just down there and kill them. But where I grew up, there's only goats and pigs. That's all we have. And I grew up pretty much in the bush, like, how would I pronounce it? Like, it's very, extremely rural. So it was already rural, and then we'd go like 20 k's up a gravel road, and our house was literally like in the bush.
Hmm.
We didn't even have electricity until I was 5 years old, I think. So we jokingly said, my wife, she's from the Gold Coast in Australia, and I've had this old picture that my mum gave me, and it's a photo of us as a family. I was probably like 2 or 3. And she jokingly she goes, "Oh, you're one of those families that make like a TV show about these days." What's it called? The bush people or whatever, Western bush people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was that vibe, it was very much that vibe. So we, like hunting wise back then, like I said, I did a lot of possum hunting when I was a kid because possums were just everywhere up there. And as we've talked about, like possums are an introduced pest. So it's sort of hardwired in the usual New Zealanders to, if you see a possum, kill the thing. So it's
Hmm.
yeah, that's just how we bought from a young age. So we did a lot of that. There was big pig hunting up there, a bit of wild goats around, whatnot. So it was a really like rural upbringing. It was like helping dad bloody slaughter the sheep from a young age. Well, because we were sort of, in other words, we were so poor that we sort of had no choice but to live off the land, sort of thing, off the little farm that we had. Um, So there was a lot of that, like fundamentals from an early age. Like I said, like farm stuff that sort of relates to, I guess, ending side. And, we sort of mucked around. Like me and my mates used to, at like, how old would we have been? Somewhere between 5 and 10. We would go up into the bush and do like survival. We'd call it like survival. So there'd be a group of us little bush kids, and we'd basically just wander off from one of our houses because all our houses were like in the bush. And we'd just take a knife, and that was it. And we had to make a shelter, you know, the whole thing. We'd come and stay out there for a few days. And like, this was in the 90s, parents in general were like a lot chiller and freer back then. And then if you go into like a very rural sort of like bush community, they're even freer because they're like, oh, it's fine. They're outside. So I spent 99% of my childhood just in the bush and playing outside. And we'd do these missions like that. We'd try and survive, catch eels out of the river to eat. And there was a population of wild turkeys. So we used to have my mate had a little Jack Russell. The dog was trained to go and chase the turkeys and grab them, and we'd bong them in the head. So soon bong them on the head, and then we'd, make a little fire up in our camp. So it was, the fundamentals of like the wilderness thinking stuff were there from, I guess, day one. And, growing up that way. And then when I was about 10, I was 10, 10, I can't remember the age. I think I was 10. So my parents split up, and my dad wanted me and my sister to have a better education. So he moved us, would it be at least 2 hours, 2.5 hours south to a city called Whangarei, which is it's a typical city, but it's pretty rough. So I was sort of this like full bush kid, like just this wild kid that had grown up in that way. And then I'm just like, okay, first day at school in like a city, and I was just so out of place. I was like, this is weird. And then yeah, I pretty much spent what was I? So we went there when I was 10. So I spent sort of my teenage years in a city there, and again, like where we were still real poor, so it was a lot of the neighborhoods. Um, so not a lot of hunting related stuff. I do the odd mission, do a lot of fishing, go out to the coast and fish a lot as well. So it was always there, but it was sort of like, it wasn't a central focus. And then when I was 18, I got sick of just the roughness of the place and my shit constantly getting stolen and just, living in a place like that. So I moved to Australia, and then again, I was always fishing, but then living in Australia, there's not really a lot of hunting. It's so we sort of got pushed to the side. And then fast forward, like long story short, when I was so 10 years ago, me and the wife, she decided time to have children. And I just said to her, I was like, man, I don't think I want to do it here, like in Australia. I was like, I think I want to go back to NZ. And we'd come back to here to Wanaka briefly while we were traveling for, I think we came back for 6 months or something. So I could get a visa to go back overseas, living in Japan at the time. And trying to remember. Yeah, and anyway, I said, look, if we're going to do this, I want to do it back in New Zealand. I want to sort of go back to my roots. And yeah, been back here 10 years and sort of just jumped right back into it. Just started, hunting again.
Mm-hmm.
She was sort of, she's Gold Coast, born and raised, so naturally didn't grow up around any of that stuff. So she was sort of like, oh, I don't know about that, and da 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 da, and she wasn't real keen on it until, started bringing some meat home, and she sort of, oh, that's really good. And then I slowly just conditioned her over the years, whereas now she works for one of the big hunting outfitters here. She helps run a bunch of the operations. So sort of gone full circle, and now she lets me out on many missions and encourages me to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started with a period of time, like sort of grew up in that mode, and then had a bunch of time away from that. So when we moved back here, I'm just like, yeah, I'm all in on this. I miss it, and the best decision we ever made is moving back to New Zealand, because I've lived all around the world, and obviously Australia played a big role. There's just, other than a bit of fishing, there's just nothing there. And I had all the big high-paying jobs. I had all this over in Australia, and it just didn't do anything for me. And as soon as I came back to New Zealand, I started getting out hunting and stuff again. I was just like, this is it. And then, I've been doing it ever since, and sort of building a bit of a brand in that world, and working with a bunch of brands, and it's sort of just the snowball rolling. And I guess having a good message. I've always, with the hunting stuff, similar to the podcasting, like we're talking about, the goal has always just been to like encourage someone, whether it's one person or 100, to do something, have a crack at it, or like, just look at life a bit differently, change their path a bit, whether it's getting into hunting or just anything, just better themselves, because the benefits of being a hunter are massive,
Absolutely.
mentally, physically, being able to provide, I'm teaching my kids, like Aurora will be 9 in a couple of months. She's been sort of hunting since she was 3,
Mm-hmm.
rabbits, all that. And the biggest message there is that being a provider, being able to go out there, into wild animal off of public land, bring the meat home and give it to other people, provide other people with, wild meat and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, that's kind of roughly like sort of my story. And all those years that I spent away from doing it, I always had it like in the back of my mind. I'm like, man, I'm going to get back to that one day, sort of thing. But like other parts of life sort of got in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then all my other mates in Australia, who all grew up with me in the far north, they all moved to Australia as well. They thought I was mad when I moved in. They're like, why would you go back there? Because economically, New Zealand's always had its issues. Naturally, a lot of young people go to Australia to like earn more,
Mm-hmm.
chase careers and stuff. But for me, the most important thing was the access to the outdoors. I live right across the road from a giant crystal clear river. I can grab my fly rod off the wall and walk across the road and go and catch a giant trout, like
Mm-hmm.
that's what's important to me.
Yeah.
Not the
Well, and like you were kind of saying, it's like these career type of jobs. It's like once you start making some good money, you kind of realize it's like, oh, this ain't really what it was all chalked up to be. And I'm much happier spending my time elsewhere. And I've had a similar sort of situation, and I feel very fortunate and blessed now to to be able to make some money and have the free time to hunt and fish, quite a bit. And so one of the things I was going to ask you is with with the kind of change you said in New Zealand's economy can be a little bit different. So, but does that mean the cost of living in New Zealand is more affordable compared to Australia? So maybe a little less opportunity to have a high paying job, but like it's a little bit more affordable to live.
I wouldn't say it's the gap is certainly closed. That's been a gap that's closed in the last. I moved to Australia when I was 18. It was like 20 years ago, almost 40. So yeah. Back then the gap was huge. You went over there, if you had like a job, you instantly get paid like more than double. And it was like, whoa. So for young Kiwis, it was like, that still is the thing to do. But I feel like the cost of living there and the wages here have kind of evened out a little bit. Now, New Zealand is a very expensive place to live. And I live in the most expensive town in the whole country. So
Mm.
it's, but yeah, like I say, I think the gap's closed, but Australia would still be. I mean, it makes sense. It's a bigger economy. It's a bigger country. It's bigger in every way, just like the US is tenfold or more bigger than Australia. So naturally, New Zealand's an island in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere, and that's
Yeah.
why it baffles me when I think it's a perspective thing. Because when you grow up here in places like I did, like up in Whangarei, like it's a bit of a shithole, and like I say, things are expensive. Most people can't get paid a lot. The, the thing that the huge difference, I'm sort of going off track, but the huge difference with the States and places like Australia and New Zealand is we have this amazing thing called tall poppy syndrome. And it stems from our European roots in England. For whatever reason, the Europeans that went to America had this mindset shift of like celebrating success, which you guys, and that's one thing I wish New Zealand and Australia would pick up from the States. You guys celebrate success, like whether it's like making money or success in your career, and you pump each other up. And it's like the mindset that Americans have around succeeding, and I don't know what the word is, like I said, like making money or whatever it is you're chasing, is one of like support. In Australia and New Zealand, with tall poppy syndrome, we have this obsession with like mediocrity. And so when people succeed, the natural response of like a good portion of the population is to drag them down. Oh, what are you trying to be? Some big bloody hunting influencer, mate? Like, come on, get into the real world. No, no, no. Like, we have this obsession with mediocrity. It drives me insane. So here, if you're willing to put yourself out and reflect it to the side and be like, I don't care what you say. I'm turning to your tall poppy bullshit. You can generally thrive. But that part of it is brutal. It's ingrained in our, for whatever reason, the Europeans that went to the States, as it came down here, they were two different types for some reason, and this tall poppy syndrome just runs through society, and it's painful. And I don't see it with people from the States. I see the opposite, where you guys are like, you're charging, you're influenced behavior, and they're like, wow, it opens their eyes because they're like, oh, everyone's not just like a miserable prick that's trying to like, it's a weird thing. It's hard to explain, but it's 100% ingrained in our society. Yeah, it's expensive place to live, but it's oh, nice at the same time.
Yeah.
If you're willing
Well,
to pay for it, it's worth it.
yeah. And so are you, is your full-time job now in the outdoor space between the filming and everything that you got going on, or is that your full-time gig now?
So I grinded for years. I guess what you call a professional photographer.
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of probably at my mid 20s, picked up a camera and just went, man, I like this. I love this more than anything. And I sort of set goals then. That was just turned 38. So that was how, do the math, 13 years ago. Um, and I basically said to myself, okay, I'm going to become a professional photographer. I put in air quotes because there's a lot of different sort of, ways that people would associate professional, whether it's like make your full-time living or whatever. I think I set the goal of like, before I'm 35, I want to do this for a job, and I achieved that. I think when I went like, full time, but I basically, I set the goal, and then I sort of achieved that. So then I was always sort of doing the hunting thing on the side. So with social media and stuff, I was always hunting and doing stuff, but I wasn't really like capturing it or like documenting it. I was more I'd post the odd photo and I'd get a bunch of hate from like the anti-hunters and stuff, and I'd be like, oh no, no, I'm not going that route. And then I sort of got to this point where I just said, stuff it, I'm going all in. Like I love this. I love this more than anything, as in hunting. So I just started banging out hunting stuff,
Yeah.
posting hunting stuff, making videos, went all in. And I guess by that point, I'd obviously gotten over the, not so much the ego side, but the side of like caring what other people thought. Because when I first posted hunting shit, I was like, oh man, I feel real bad that I've like offended these people who were anti-hunters. And then over time, I realized like, oh, they just doesn't matter what you do, like you're gonna get haters regardless. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just went all in on it and started like posting stuff. At the time, we were doing a bit with like Hunter's Element, which is New Zealand hunters hunting dog. Still wasn't really leaning into like the whole personal brand thing. It was more of just like on the professional photographer side, so we go hunting and shoot their products, just give them images. And then, yeah, sort of, I guess with me, when it comes to like goals, I'll set a goal. And when I achieve it, I'm like, okay, what's next? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I had this goal that I grinded at for years. I worked my ass off, like, while I had other jobs, while I was doing other things to become a professional photographer, make my living from it. And I achieved it. And then, like anything, it kind of just became a job. And I was like, okay, achieved that. And it's like, okay, it's just another shoot. Like, and I did lots of cool stuff and I loved it. And I still do it, obviously, when the jobs are right and the budgets are there. But you sort of build your name, you build your reputation, your skills, and you sort of, your pricing follows. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm actually only willing to shoot certain things. And you
Mm-hmm.
sort of get to pick and choose. So I guess I achieved that goal. And then I was like, okay, what's next? And then I'm like, hunting's next. I love it. Pivot into that. And then, so just, what's the date? Just over a year ago, we did it for, and that's when this year, Caliber, so me and my mate Jace, we had always done the hunt filming for ourselves. So basically, simply a lot like people from America come over and hunt with outfitters here, or however they're doing it. They then hire us to film their hunts. So we approach it differently. We're basically like a second guide, because we're out there, and a lot of these outfitters have had issues with filmers in the past who have either come over here and don't really know how it goes, or they just have different ways of working. They haven't shot in the hunting space. Next minute, they're trying to climb a bloody mountain with all the camera gear and just making it an issue for the guides. So a lot of the outfitters sort of had this real negative view of cameramen. So when we made this, we're sort of slowly proving to them that, like, no, if you get cameramen who are actually hunters, it's seamless. It's a good experience because we're there, we're filming, but we're carrying meat out. We're like another guide basically, but we're just capturing it. So we always did it separately for like probably the last 4 or 5 years, and then we were like, why don't we just like make this into something a bit more official? So we sort of teamed up, and we're doing sort of like we're only a year in, but Jace does a lot of the filming side, mainly because he's better at it. And then I've sort of do a lot of the content. So we're doing like a multi-tier sort of thing with like the actual business side mostly is on the filming, but then we're doing content as well. And the idea was that if you build a brand on something that isn't associated with your name, it can be exactly that. It can be more of a brand. You could move into different avenues in the future. You just have to build it up. So he's been doing a lot on the filming side. I do more on the content, and we sort of just approach it like a team, I feel like you can achieve more in a team than you can solo. So yeah.
Well, and
The filming
oh, I was going to say, they've always kind of said out here, it's like it's easier to teach a hunter how to film than a cameraman how to sneak around in the woods and, make sure you're covered and understand even what's going on half of the time. So since you guys have that hunting background, I'm assuming you have a huge leg up there. And like you were saying, with the outfitter space being so wide and sort of diluted, you kind of narrowed your focus, and it sounds like there's not a whole lot of people pursuing the same avenue that you guys are, that more niche down of like, hey, we're hunters who make film and make content for outfitters and people who are coming over to hunt. So do you feel like that kind of niche is less crowded?
yeah, there's a few more popping up, but like Josh, for instance, his kid is older. So he's got a lot more freedom. He's like 10 years older than me. So he's been traveling all over. He's just been to Spain with Lucas, what's his name? Lucas Hodge, country music guy, country music singer. He just did a trip to Spain with him, filming his hunt there. Um, he went to Montana last year. Obviously, being a dual citizen American, it's easy for him. He just cruises in. Where else did he go? He went somewhere else international recently. He went over to the SCI show in Nashville. Is it Nashville, the big one? He
There's
went over there just for like networking.
Yeah. We have a lot of those different types of things where, depending on if it's a turkey show or a Safari Club International or the Wild Sheep Foundation, if you were like, I'm going to go and wear my gear and talk to people, you could do a year-long thing and really get your name out there and probably get up to, just make those contacts, because you plant the seed and then next year, oh, I remember you from last year. I seen you on Instagram, blah, 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 all that type of stuff.
Yeah, networking is definitely changed. That's what we're finding is a lot of these old outfitters, they're all old school. You mention media to them on social media or cameras. No. They just like shut down because they're older, they're the boomer generation. But, we're like, just give us this summer, get us on up. And we come along and we're sort of using the work to prove ourselves. So then they go, oh, actually, these dudes are sweet. It was like, they just blend in, and, the whole idea is to not. So many of these outfitters have been burdened by camera guys in the past that we are trying to have the opposite approach, and we actually enhance the experience for the clients. And it helps that we work directly for the client as well. So the outfitter isn't really liable for anything. We're just there with the client. Yeah. So we're going to keep building it and keep doing it because we can really enjoy it,
Yeah.
and we get to make cool stuff. Like it's rewarding for these people that come over and hunt. Even if they are just like you say, hunting a high fence property or whatever. At the end of the day, we get to deliver them this piece of media. Whether we do a week with them or 2 days, it's a cool little film for them to remember. And like some of the families and stuff that come over, you do it with their kids. Like I did one it was last year, and they brought over the granddad, and he hunted a stag, and on the same day, the grandson hunted a fallow buck. And I was there to cook for it all, and I'm like, those priceless memories for them.
Mm-hmm.
The old fellow the old guy he was pretty old. Him on a stag was a mission. Um, Stuff like that. Like what do they say? A photo says 1,000 words or whatever.
Right.
That side of it's pretty cool. Where you know that like these people have this thing that they can watch forever and look
Mm-hmm.
back on as a
Yeah.
memory. So it's yeah,
Even if you're paying big money to go to a private joint or whatever, it's like, hey, that's the situation they're in. And, some guys don't have the time or energy to, like me, I'm in the gym almost every single day. I'm rucking, I'm doing all this stuff just so I don't bonk in the mountains because I have. And I'm like, oh gosh, this sucks. I feel like such a softie, and I hate to have that. And so, and I kind of look at it too, like, I'm 34 now. If I'm lucky, I got another 25, maybe 30 years of memory making. And then once I'm old, I can just sit around and tell stories of going to New Zealand or going here and doing this and this elk I killed and blah 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 blah. And that's why I love documenting my hunts so much, is because it's like, not only can I tell you the story, I'm gonna show it to you in 4K, right? And to me that's so important. But I'm not big on crapping on other people's dreams, because even if they come out to New Zealand, spend $20,000, for most people that's still a lot of money, right? And it means a lot to them because it's a lot of travel time, and it's just an adventure. And I don't want anybody to feel like their adventure is insignificant or irrelevant, because one, making somebody feel bad isn't going to make me feel better, right? I'm not that kind of person. Um, and if they're having fun and they're hunting in a way that is unanimously ethical, right? I don't see any harm in that, whether your method is different than mine. And I see you got your bow back there. I wanted to talk a little bit about bow hunting, because a buddy of mine, he went to Australia and did some hunting. And I know bow hunting is totally banned on the northern side of Australia. And you can still bow hunt in the south. But he was saying the perspective around hunting down there is so different. Like if you were wearing your camo and you go to the pub, you might get some looks. Or you tell people that you're hunting, you might get some looks. Are you seeing any resistance with bow hunting in New Zealand, or is it still kind of like, man, smack them?
no, but I think that's pretty open yet. The rule we have with bow hunting here is you have to shoot more than 35 pounds on public land,
Mm-hmm.
which is who's not doing that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not considering it too. And the thing is, let's say you were going to come here to hunt with a rifle, you would have to get a what do you call it? Like a not a reason. No, what am I thinking of? What's the word? Foreigner. Basically, you have to get a temporary gun license
Oh, okay.
for New Zealand while you're here if you want to bring rifles over. And there's a lot of paperwork and stuff. So a lot of the people that come and hunt here, they just will use like the guide or the outfitter's rifles. Because they will have them. And then some guys prefer to bring their own stuff, but there's just a bit of paperwork and stuff. Where with bows, I'm pretty sure you just bring it along. And they're just like, oh, it's fine. I'd have to look at it. I don't know what the exact paperwork is, but if there's any, like bows are just, they're not really, you don't have to lock them on, you need to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, whatever. And, I'm finding out why, being a rifle hunter my whole life and now jumping into the bow hunting. Like, yeah, this is a whole different world. It
Yeah.
is hard work.
Oh yeah.
100%. But no, it's not. That's generally, it's all demographics. If you're in Auckland, in the North Island, which is the biggest city, and you're rolling into a top with full camo on, they're city people. They're probably going to look at you a bit sideways. here where I live, which is a rural town, which is filled with hunting outfitters. People wouldn't even bat an eye. I was actually in the supermarket the other day, and a bunch of American hunters came through in full camo, and like it's perfectly normal. I stop at the shop with a bloody go on the roof of my car and go and I had blood dripping on the windscreen, and it was like, it's not around here,
Mm-hmm.
just because that's where I live. But
Yeah.
in a city, yeah, you get a few looks. But it's New Zealand. It's hunting. If you're a Kiwi, you know that hunting is part of our culture. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Pretty
it's
aware of it.
and I can imagine the hunting, like you say near Auckland, you probably have to go pretty far out to get into some game. So it's like it makes sense why you're not going to see hunters maybe at the supermarket or at the pub in a place where it's like, what are you doing? There's no deer within 100 miles of here.
Yeah, there was a few outfitters based not far from Auckland. Like, it's private land style. Um, there's not a huge amount of dock land up that way. I see that's where you got the North Island and the South Island, but if you live in the South Island, we like to call it the main island because it's like the middle one. It's just a bit of a, there's always, it's like Kiwis and Aussies, we always have that sort of friendly feud going on.
Oh, okay.
It's just
I
a bit,
gotcha.
but yeah, there's a couple of outfitters not far out of, I can't remember the names, not far out of Auckland. Like the majority of them are down here
Mm-hmm.
in the south. But yeah, no, it's part of our culture. Whether like we talked about earlier, whether like the Greenies like it or not. We've had all sorts of issues lately with like the Fiordland Wapiti Foundations set up. There's another organisation here called Forest and Bird, and they're very much their sort of rhetoric or the way they would want things to be is they want to turn New Zealand back to how it was like 200 years ago, and there was nothing here other than a bunch of birds. And like the reality is, people are like, well, you can't get rid of this stuff. Like deer. Like there was one Greens. He had a Greens. What was it? Environment minister a few years ago. She was the one that was responsible for like the tahr cull. They did a big tahr cull, and it got like worldwide bloody press
Mm-hmm.
because they were out there just shooting thousands of tahr out of helicopters and just letting them rot. Apparently the numbers were too high, which was ridiculous. But anyway, the Greens were in as the environment. She put out this thing. They wanted to get rid of trout out of the rivers. And people were like, that's literally impossible. Like you can't do it. And you have the same sort of mindset with like deer and shit. And people were like, just accept it and move on. Like, these things are part of it. And they, I think Forest and Bird, they sued or took like legal action against the Fjord and Wapiti Foundation because they're trying to push through a bill called Birds of Special Interest, which would basically protect the Wapiti. And they want to do the same thing for the Sika, I think, which are in the North Island. Um, so it's basically like the hunting community is sort of gaining a bit of ground here slowly because we've got these organisations that are being formed, like the Game Animal Council, which is now in Parliament, So we're slowly, because it
Mm-hmm.
was very much going the other way for a while.
Yeah.
A lot of the hunting industry was getting sort of shut down by these people with this view that New Zealand's good like it was, before anything was introduced. And then the real thing for that was all these foundations, the Fallow Foundation, Sika Foundation, we got the bloody, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Game Animal Council, we've got the NZDA, which is our like Deer Stalkers Association. So everyone's sort of grouped together to start to like push back and be like, no, like this is a huge percentage of your population that that is
Yeah.
part of this hunting community. Like we need a voice.
Well, and it's
Um,
a lot of careers and opportunities for people. And I'm reminded of what similar things were happening in the state of Hawaii. Hawaii has a lot of invasive like axis deer, mouflon sheep, goats, pheasants, all sorts of stuff. And there was people who were like, "Oh, we need to get rid of all of this. We need to get Hawaii back to the way it was before, the white man came." And then, but even like islanders, the Hawaiians are like, "You can't tell me, I've been hunting these animals my whole life. My dad, my grandfather, his dad have been, you can't tell us that this isn't a part of our culture and our heritage and our history because it's like we've been hunting and surviving off these for over 100 years at this point. Just because it's not the way that it was when, Captain Cook showed up in a ship. Doesn't mean that we didn't evolve with these animals and grow with it. And it's like, it's so silly and asinine when you have somebody or an organization who's going against the will of the people because you have some ideological thing of like, I just want to see the landscape completely empty with no elk or no deer. And it's like, why? These are amazing animals. Like, you should love seeing these things.
Resource.
And
Yeah.
a huge resource. And at this point too, it's been going on so long, multiple generations of people have been growing with that, and it's a part of your history at this point, whether they like it or not. And I think ultimately people need something to just be involved with, and so they get a little crazy about it. But I really, because conservation is a big part of what I do. I'm a part of a couple different organizations, and we're always fighting back. We have politics every year trying to sell public lands, or anti-hunters trying to reduce access to animals. And I'm a part of an organization, a very popular organization, that is on the front line of fighting back with that type of stuff. And it's a fight. It really is. And so it's great to hear that you guys are developing similar conservation groups and protections so that these resources can be available for years and years and generations to come.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. The sad reality with those situations, I think, is the people that are making decisions or deciding that everything is to go are the ones who are sitting in a city in Auckland or Wellington, and like don't even put a foot on the public land, and yet they're telling us who literally live in it every week that it's about what we do, and it's like it's such a convoluted thing. But again, there are things like the Tahr Foundation, which are quite new. They were formed off the back of the opposite people culling Tahr, because it's like, oh shit, like these people can actually make this shit happen. We need to put something in place to protect them. But I did a podcast a while ago with a guy called Tristan, who's got an app here called Huntmate, and he's a lifelong hunter, just an epic bird, and super knowledgeable. And he's done it to sort of share his hunting experience. But he said a cool thing, a good thing in the podcast, which I think is completely true. And here in New Zealand, we sort of have the opposite problem that, well, I guess the same problem, but the animals don't have enough value in the sense that everything's labeled as a pest. Deer, everything. So you have this certain percentage of people, including the older hunters who came from like the deer war days, where it was like the deer numbers were under control, so it was just like kill everything. Where, like he said, until the labels get changed to actually these are a resource, not a pest, and we need like some sort of tag system or something that puts more value on these animals, because as long as they stay a pest, that opposing group is going to have fuel, to be like, well, they're a pest, so we've got to eradicate them. And that's what keeps happening. As soon as that numbers get too high or whatever, send in the truckers, boom, wipe it. Like the amount of hunting spots around here that have been ruined by things like Waro, and they'll put out submissions and say, oh, you can submit to have your say on whether we open the spot to Waro or not. 90% of people are like, no, don't. It's a good witness got back. Oh, we're going to do it anyway. And now it's ruined. There's no doing it. And it's completely, and that's the issue, is we actually need more, I guess, structure to say, like, yeah, this is actually a really valuable resource because, like you said, there's generations of people who live off this wild.
Yeah.
And here you are just telling everybody, oh, they're just dirty pests, just get rid of them. We don't want them here. It's like, no, they're here to stay. And they need to be labeled as a valuable resource for that reason. So it's quite frustrating. But
as a New Zealand resident and hunter, would you support the implementation of a tag system, even if it meant like you have to buy a hunting license and pay for that tag? And as a resident, like in my state, to get a deer tag, $40, right? And then every additional doe tag, like $7, right? Cheap. And then the state gets that money, and they can use that to. This is kind of controversial. A lot of people think my state doesn't use the money properly, but it helps manage our public lands, and we've reintroduced elk, and we have all these other different programs that are happening, and that's all kind of off the back of those tag sales. So do you think that as a hunter, would you support something like that? Do you think that would be the best thing to kind of protect the species?
And at this stage of life, I would support it because I would happily pay, like you say, like a small amount, like what you said, that's nothing. That's well doable. The biggest issue you would have here in New Zealand is because we've always had this unlimited access to the game and the public land is the way that the average Kiwi sees hunting in New Zealand is it's this free thing. It's like it's an entitlement almost. It's a given, it's not a privilege. Whereas that's what I see like in the States. A lot of you guys grow up having to pay to hunt in some way, whether it's a tag or like you say, like with an outfitter, or whatever. We have the complete opposite view. We have the view of like, oh, you just, you take some sort of gun or rifle and you're killing apparatus and you go and walk out in the hills and it's a completely, yeah. Humans have this sort of privileged mindset with hunting. It's
Mm-hmm.
like they're entitled to it, because it's public land. We pay for it in our taxes and all this shit. But until, like you say, something gets implemented where the 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 animals are seen as a valuable resource, nothing's going to change. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would support it 100% because I'd happily pay, like you say, however much the tags are. It's not much to go and hunt on public land, but you would definitely get pushback from it from probably the majority of the hunting population here who have always seen it as like a right almost, to be able to hunt for free on public land. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a tricky one, but the value of the animals won't change until we implement something like that,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
And out here, the non-resident tags are much more expensive. Like if I wanted to go hunt
Mhm.
elk in Wyoming, for example, it can't be done for really less than $1,000 for a bull tag. And again, I'm at that point in my life where I'm like, gladly. There's nothing I would love more than to support this state, support their conservation efforts, and they have great elk hunting. And to me, I'm like, it's worth the money. This is all I care about is really hunting and chasing big animals. So that means, I don't spend as much, maybe, I don't drink alcohol or go out to restaurants. And so it's like, I take all that money I would spend on alcohol or food and just save it. Right. And obviously everybody's financial picture is a little bit different. I could see, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot here, but it's like if New Zealand was like, okay, non-residents to the other, maybe a different country, Americans or Aussies coming in, you guys are going to have to pay a little bit of money to hunt and access these animals. Um, these are the type of things that could be totally worked out, but it adds more value. So then you have more ammo to say, hey, we rely on this money from when the Americans come and they want to hunt wapiti or they want to hunt fallow deer. Uh, if you get rid of them all, we're not going to be able to get that money. And everybody knows, everybody loves American money. I mean, our our money works good everywhere, And so,
But
yeah, it's really interesting because I mean, to me, there's so much allure to New Zealand with just how free it is. But again, it's the type of thing where I'm like, I would gladly pay a reasonable fee. I'm not going to pay $20,000 because that's why I would want to come there in the first place. If they're like, come on over, give us $1,000, you can hunt just like a Kiwi, and you're all good. I'm like, okay, that's fair.
yeah,
I'm already going to
yeah,
spend money on air and a vehicle and all this, so it kind of adds to it. And most people who can afford to get over there could probably afford to throw another $1,000 into the pot if it helps sustain the population in New Zealand.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think the biggest issue we'd run into there would be the management of funds because places, organizations like Block, the Public Conservation, they're notoriously bad at managing anything.
Yeah.
And not having good, especially when it comes to hunting. The Department of Conservation sort of outline and view as much of the same as, like I said, those greenies who want everything done, like what's perspective on hunting, as much as they run like ballets and stuff like around here. I think the overarching sort of perspective is like, oh, just get rid of everything, all pests. So you'd almost, if you did implement that here, you'd have to have a different body that managed it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, whether it be like the animal defense or something. And that's the problem is we're only just getting these organizations that are actually run by hunters that
Hmm.
know the game, that know the industry. Because as much as, they might know some things and run some ballots and do some things, ultimately they don't care for hunting. Their priorities are, I guess, more conservation side, but then there's a lot of controversy in that space too. Like I'm sure you've probably heard about 1080. Like we still use
Yeah.
1080 in New Zealand, and it's a huge controversy. Like very few hunters you'll talk to would support them using 1080, but
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, it just keeps happening in this country. Like most people are against it, but think it's all just comes down to it's all a big money. Well, it's like no one can really fathom. Like I guess there's arguments to be said. Like in certain situations, there's places where native birds and stuff have thrived where they've 1080'd it to get rid of
Mm-hmm.
possums and rats and everything. Most places I've hunted that have been 1080, there's bloody no bird life. Good. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it kills everything. Everything eats it. It kills deer. It kills possums. It kills every animal that touches the shit. So it's hard because they put out all these studies saying, oh, well, we've 1080'd this area and now this, whatever the native bird is thriving and it's everywhere. You go on public, like on a private land, bush where it's like private land, it's never been 1080. The bird song is insane.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a public block in the bush that's been 1080'd in the last few years, every year for the last 10 years, it was good. There's no good enough, so it's like what they put out and what the reality is, people are seeing is two different things. So it's like people are like, why is this still happening?
Yeah.
So their sort of focus on conservation is these conservationists, and yet they bloody spray poison all over them.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I don't know. We have, as you can see, we have a few issues. As much as it's free and open, and it's all pretty relaxed. There's definitely some issues here. And if we were to implement some sort of paying thing, we would definitely need someone else to manage that money.
Yeah.
There's
Well, people
there's
get
never been a
greedy
good reputation.
all the time. It just, you can't, you get a bunch of money involved, and no man is immune to the temptations of
Yeah.
greed. It happens, and
Yeah.
it's really a damn shame. I was curious. You said I got a couple things here. You said your friend's app was called Huntmate.
Huntmate. Yeah, yeah. It's a
It,
guy, Preston's his name. He's a good bugger. He's a good old Southland Otago boy. He's been around this area his whole life. Really good hunter. And he is basically I did a podcast with him. It was really good. And he's a real knowledgeable hunter, but he's sort of got to that point in life where he was like, how can I make hunting a job, or like, help other people get into it? Similar to me, like Sam. That's why I really enjoyed doing the pod with him. And he built this app, and he does all sorts of stuff on there. He shares news, like all hunting related news. So he's sort of building a bit of a community, and he's encouraging young guys to get out there and hunt and sort of helping them. He does workshops, and the other thing he's been doing is he'll like go out just with his camera into different areas and he'll scout them, and he'll make maps where he saw animals. It's all dock land, public land. And then he sells those maps for whatever price. He only sells a certain amount because naturally, like people would push back and be like, no, just give everybody access, because it's like ruining the hunting spot. So he's like, no, I only do like 10 or whatever of each spot, and people can buy them and buy the information. And I just put up, if you go back and look up on YouTube, I just put up a video last couple of days ago from last weekend. We went hunting. That's one of the spots off his app. Like we brought the map and went in there, and sort of what he said was in there was in there. So
Incredible.
guys like him who he has the right, his morals around hunting are right. He's got a good sort of head on in the sense that, like I said, seeing the animals as a resource, and just having a good mindset around it, and like the ethics. I really agree with how he sort of thinks. He's sort of, yeah, he's a good hunter all around in the skill side and the way that he sort of sees everything, and the ethics side of it. Um,
Yeah. And I like that, how he kind of keeps it limited, right? Because if he just went in there and blew up a spot, and then you have way too much pressure, and he's like, okay, I can help control it. Because if he's a good hunter, he can look at the landscape and he's like, we could probably put about 10 hunters in here over a week or two, and everybody could have good space and nobody's going to be bumping into each other, and there's enough game here. And then if he goes back and
yeah,
re-scouts it and he's like, oh man, they really smashed on this place, we better I better not promote this spot too much, right, for a little bit,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. Because that's something that there's people who kind of do something similar here. They'll sell Onyx pens, and it's really frowned upon. Like really frowned upon. Like, oh, I seen a herd of elk here. Give me $250. I'll give you the pictures and the videos or whatever. Like you will get, hung out to dry if you're trying to advertise that type of stuff. But this sounds really ethical and thoughtful, which is nice.
I think the difference is, I mean, he like you said, he's basically trying to do some of the scouting for the people that don't have time or the effort, Um, if he was just some young guy, it was just some bloody cowboy that's out there with, he's like you said, he's just doing it for money. With Christian, it's clearly not that. He's a very experienced hunter, and he's very respected in the space.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, he did get a little bit of pushback. I was like, "Oh, you can't, don't do that." Da, da, da. And he was like, "No, no, no, look," and explained it. He's good with his words, and okay. And like you said earlier, I don't, I never hate on or frown on anybody, especially if they're having a crack and doing something. That's the full premise of my podcast, is showing these people like their story and what they're doing. Like I want to see everybody thrive and prosper in whatever it is they're having a go at.
Mm-hmm.
And, in that case, it's like, he's found a way to make a living hunting where he still wants to be out there hunting in the world. And like, the thing is, it's all about effort. Like, we went into a spot that he sort of like, oh yeah, he just cruise up there and da da da. And we were like dying. And so we're like, yeah, this, he's a machine at the end of the day. And again, like you say, if it was just some young dipshit just trying to rot people for money, it's a
Mm-hmm.
different story. But the way he's doing it, it's really good because he's actually, like I said, he's building a community.
Mm-hmm.
He's on his app. He shares news every week. He's very involved in hunting culture because the hunting's sort of top, I guess, what do you call it? I think it's the hunting society here in New Zealand. I don't know what you call it. The group of people who are hunters is pretty small
Mm-hmm.
in reality. It's a small percentage of the population. So it's a pretty small space. The population of New Zealand's only what 5 million.
Oh, okay.
Probably
Wow.
only
Yeah.
max max couple 100,000 hunters, if that.
Yeah.
You'd be pushing it, but
Well, I
in the
really
like
like,
public figure space, it's pretty tight.
yeah. Well, I really like that too because it's like, a guy who wants to hunt can go out and do a bunch of scouting, and that's great. But the only other option really is hire a guide, hire an outfitter who knows where those herds are and whatnot. So essentially, he's kind of wedged himself in the middle here. It's like you don't want to hire a guide, you don't want to spend all that extra money. You can give me a little less money, and I'll tell you where I have seen some animals, and then you can go out and grind it out and make something of it. So really, really brilliant kind of way of looking at it. And I'm gonna download the app and I'm gonna keep and follow it just because I've kind of grown a fascination for New Zealand and what's kind of happening over
Yeah.
there as I'm working
Well, if you
myself
want,
up.
yeah, if you want a good yarn with about that side of things on the hunting, he's great. Like with that podcast we did really well. People really enjoyed it,
Yeah.
and it was just because he's very knowledgeable in that space. And thing is, like you said, like I was saying before, his goal is to get more people into hunting.
Mm,
Because that's the issue we have in New Zealand. There's not enough of us. For every young fellow that gets into the hunting world, there's 10 old buggers who are hanging about, you know. And we all have different sort of mindsets. A lot of those old fellas come from the deer culling days where it was just like they got paid to go out and shoot as many deer as they could to get rid of them. So now the younger generation's coming in, who are like us, who, like I call us the younger old fellas in this age bracket, around 40, who sort of have a bit more ethics involved, who can
mm,
then pass that down to the younger crew that are getting into it, who
mm,
are just the young hooligans, and show them like the respectful side of things and stuff. I think at his core, that's what he wants to do. He wants to get more people into hunting and learn the right ethics around it and how to do it, and
yeah.
not the old school way of like, yeah, brown sugar sort of
Right.
thing,
Right.
because a lot of our what were like our trophy herds and stuff, um, getting decimated for that reason because people are just shooting. I just want to shoot something with some antler on its head, and I think that the stags aren't getting old enough. It's like, because there's no actual management by the state or whatever, it's like our hunting culture, our society, whatever, kind of needs to take charge, and sort of do it ourselves, because no one else is going to manage it anytime soon, I don't think. But you never know. Things might change.
Well, I'm
I'm
definitely going to
hopeful.
have to go back and listen to that podcast you did with him, because that sounds really informative, and
Hmm.
I'm going to definitely have to check that out. One of the questions I had was in regards to the public land. The huts get talked about a lot. Are those pretty prolific, or is it kind of more you'll find the huts in the block areas, and everywhere else you kind of got to just pitch a tent?
Um, so yeah, we have a very big network of public land. We call them dock huts. Again, dock is Department of Conservation land. That's public land essentially. Um, it's just managed by the Department of Conservation. So yeah, if you look at like we use an app here called NZ Topo 50, and you can turn on the different layers and you can see all the different bits. Like the South Island is littered with them. Every valley's almost got a hut up it or multiple huts. A lot of them are maintained by volunteers, and different organisations like trusts and track trusts and all sorts of stuff. And I think the vast majority of them are like first come, first serve. So yeah, just because you have like one of the local blocks here, you have it for the ballot. There's nothing saying you might sign up there. It's full of trampers, because the block is only balloted for hunting, not for tramping or fishing. So Um, yeah, the dog parks are really good. There's obviously different levels. Some of them are really nice in the touristy areas. Then some are just literal bivs, it's just like a little flap essentially that you can curl up in an emergency or whatever. But yeah, the actual hut system is amazing, because you can plan out a mission, go up this valley. Oh, there's a hut there, sweet. And I mean, you're supposed to buy what you call hut tickets. I think they're like $5.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you put them in the box there, and that's sort of your payment. But it's it's kind of an honesty system thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't do it. It's sort of just like, yeah. But yes, I think you can book some certain huts you can book, so you get a bed. And then other ones, like I said, are first come, first serve. But most of the time, depending on the season, especially if you're hunting over winter, you're not going to have issues with too many people, unless you're on something like the TA Trail, it's called the Royal Trail. It runs the length of New Zealand. So every summer, thousands of people come and walk that trail. For instance, our hunting we had here last year, a local one far from here, was on the TA Trail, and so every night the hut was full of TA walkers, um, which was quite interesting because it's two different types of people, hunters and very free type of trail. It's a couple of stag heads out on the rock, scared most of them away, I think. A little bit, but yeah, the huts are amazing. They're such a resource, and it drives me insane when I see people like trashing them and just doing mainly young through. No one over the age of like 30 is going to be doing that stuff, but you do get the odd situation where people
Sure, maybe
disrespect the huts.
some young guys going out there getting drunk and thrashing,
Exactly.
making a ruckus. And yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
can't say that I didn't do dumb stuff when I was in my early 20s too.
Yeah.
We
Exactly.
we all do.
We're doing silly young things, but yeah, if you get on certain maps, you can see every hunt. You know,
Hmm.
here and that. Like I had to use the South Island version because I don't really hunt in the North Island. I don't go up there often enough, but um, and it just comes up as like a little thing, and you can usually go on to the public conservation website and look up the information for that hunt, and it'll say like first come first serve or book. You can book it or whatever it might be. It gives you all the information, the traps to get there. The estimates on their times are pretty average.
Hmm.
Like they'll say it'll take 4 hours to walk from this spot to the hut, but a lot of the time it's either like way longer or way shorter. So don't know what they base it off, but yeah, they're an amazing resource. especially for hunters, man. Like whether you just need it in an emergency when the weather turns, or you can base yourself out of a lot of them, like especially the alpine ones. If you're up looking for tahr or chamois,
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty cool to have. A lot of them will have um, water tanks, some sort of toilet, like a long drop, depending on what they are. Like not a flash, but it's a big. A lot of them have fires in them. So if you're hunting over the colder months, you can at least like stay warm.
Yeah.
Some are rough, some are really rough, and some are quite nice. So it just depends where you go. Naturally, the nicer ones are going to be in areas where there's more people.
Mm-hmm.
The more use they get, sort of the more maintenance they get. Um, but yeah, definitely a good resource if you come in. You can definitely utilize the hut system.
What a cool thing. I mean, it ties into that sort of like generosity of the public land and the resources. It's like, for just a couple bucks, you could have a roof over your head to and honestly, you know how it is sometimes if you're out there in what you guys call the bush for 4 or 5 days, sometimes you just need to like dry your bones with an actual, actual hut, and that could keep you out there chasing big game longer. And so that's absolutely amazing. So I kind of want to get into species and some specifics here. One of the things that we haven't really talked about, we've talked about hunting a lot, but what's the fishing like? What are some of the target species that guys like out there? I know as an island, you have all of the offshore stuff, and then I'm assuming you have some inland stuff. So what are the popular ones that guys like to chase, and what's that like?
Being inland, like where I live in Waika, obviously I'm in the center of the island, so it's all fly fishing here. But in saying that, we're only 3 hours to the east coast and an hour and a half to the west coast. West coast is rough, as you'd imagine. So it's a lot of fly fishing around here where I live. It's in the Lakes District. So we have rainbow trout, brown trout, salmon, um, Lake Dunstan, which is sort of south of here. There's some perch in there, the weird stripy looking
Hmm.
things. Um, on the freshwater species, that's about it. Obviously, we have things like eels and whatnot. But for actual like fishing, like freshwater fishing, rainbow trout and brown trout would be your main ones. And again, it's another thing that we are so spoiled. Like we have a world class fishery right there,
Hmm.
and we get people from over here who are like, at home, if they catch like a rainbow trout like this big, that's like amazing. And then we just walk this around from my house and we catch like 6 pounders, and they're like, what? Like, but we forget it's not normal for us.
Yeah.
Like we go up backcountry rivers and we're catching like 10 pound wild trout. And for us, we're like, yeah, it's great. But you get people come over from other places and they're like mind blowing by how good
Yeah.
it is. So we're just spoiled in a lot of those senses. But yeah, it's amazing. Like I do a lot of fly fishing, and on the ocean side, I mean, the better ocean fishing is going to be off the North Island, just based on the water temperature. Down
Hmm.
here, it's cold, so it's a lot of cold water species. They don't doing a lot of fishing in the north. Like we used to jump in a little dinghy and we would call it a tinny, kind of, and let's snapper like this, the big red snapper and stuff. So the fishing up there, like offshore in the ocean, is amazing. I just don't do much of it anymore.
Yeah.
I pretty much only fly fish around here. But yeah, we don't have many sea run salmon. There's a few rivers on the east coast of the South Island that we get sea run salmons, which can be big, but the population's been sort of dwindling over the last 10 years because they're not native, obviously, they're just stocked over time.
Hmm.
And then the native returning population has just sort of gotten hammered, I think. It hasn't rebounded, but hopefully it will. But yeah, trail fishing around here, which again, that's another thing that a lot of hunters come here to do. Like if they come here based with an outfitter or whatever, they'll also do some fly fishing.
Hmm.
Because we have, like I said, lakes and rivers, and we have not sea, landlocked salmon in the lakes. 'Cause the rivers are all dammed,
Hmm.
so they can't go to the ocean. So they only get, yay big, but they're
Yeah.
there, sort of thing. But yeah, the trout fishing is probably where you're at, and that's the one thing that you do need a license for.
Oh, okay.
So the freshwater fishing and the duck hunting, which today is actually opening day for duck hunting.
Oh, okay.
I should probably get you excited. Yeah, the 1st of
Yeah.
May, or the first weekend, the first Saturday of May. every year is our opening of duck hunting.
Yeah.
Um, so fishing game, they manage hunting and freshwater fishing.
Okay.
They don't manage any other hunting.
So the
It's just
fishing's
those
fly
two.
fishing only. There's no spinning rods.
No, you use spin rods. Yeah. Most of
Oh,
the rivers you can still spin on. There is
okay.
fly fishing only rivers, but like there's a section across the river across the road from my house. There's a section which is the very top end of the river where a lot of the spawning happens, which is fly fishing only.
Uh-huh.
So there is parts, but most of it you can spin as well. Most of the backcountry rivers you can even use a spin rod. It's just different bag limits, like what you can keep. But a lot, like we fly fish, so most of our stuff's just catch and release.
Yeah.
But you do need a license. So we just buy, and I think with the license, it's actually more for non-residents. So you
Hmm.
pay a little bit extra, much like what we put in the hunting one there, fishing, you pay a little bit more as a non-resident for a freshwater fishing license. Like I just buy, what do I buy? A full season license. I think I buy the family license actually. So the wife and kids do it as well. But it's not very expensive. Like a full season license is like $140 New Zealand or something. It goes up
Hmm.
every year naturally. Um, and then I think as a non-resident, you just pay a little bit more, but you can also just buy like a day license. So if you're like here on a hunting trip and you're like, I just want to go fishing for one day, it's
Hmm.
like $20 or something, you
Right.
just have a license for the day. It's all online.
So duck
So
duck
that's one
hunting
part.
is a big part of my life. Once like November hits, I'm like ready to get out of the woods and get into some cold, wet crap. What's the duck hunting like there? Is it migrators coming from north, or what, or are they resident ducks that start kind of?
There's not much migration here because we're an island and
Yeah.
so none of our species that we,
Hmm.
Canada geese are actually like as much as they're part of the game bird hunting, you can also hunt them year round. We're allowed to set them in the rifles as well, which is
Okay.
kind of crazy
Interesting. Yeah.
because they're like knock this pest again, like everything, and the numbers well under control, so that opened up the regulations. So in some hunting videos in New Zealand, you'll see people walking up the valley and seeing some geese and just like blasting one with a three or something. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, there's different rules for like private land, I think as well. I don't do a lot of duck hunting. I have in the past, like when I was younger, but like today, like everyone's excited. Even one of the teachers at my kid's school, they had an assembly the other week, and he said in the assembly like he's offline from this date because it's opening day. Hunting days for ducks is massive here. Like you'd love the duck hunting culture for sure.
And is there public land opportunities
It's
for that duck
massive.
hunting?
Yeah. Heaps of different public land spots. So they have like flagging day, whatever it's called, where you go out and you put up your things to basically say this is my area.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, and you have your little tag things. And again, like that's something you need a license for as well. So
Huh.
for fishing and duck hunting, there's a license you have to actually buy. And that's
Yeah.
because fishing game manages those entities, but we don't have anything like that for like big game hunting. Other than like a free online permit, like I said, which is
Hmm.
takes 5 minutes to get. So yeah, the management of the duck hunting and freshwater fishing is a lot better than any other hunting aspects for that reason.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, this
That
fishing
sounds.
game is its own sort of its own not foundation. It's like they have employees. It's a big thing. Much like what's the one called over there? I don't know what it's called.
Well,
Something similar.
yeah, each state has their own each state has their own department, and then the federal, like the US Fish and Wildlife Service, they kind of oversee the federal side of it. So like ducks, for example, are federally managed. So US Fish and Wildlife says, for example, you cannot take up to more than 6 mallards or more than 5 mallards. And then the states are like, well, we actually think that's too many, so we're going to say you can only take 4 mallards, and then the other species, so on and so forth down the line. And it's really having that federal management of the waterfowl has helped in a lot of ways. We definitely have some problems right now with wildlife management with this administration. Historically, Republicans were very much outdoors people and in support of hunters, fishermen, farmers, things of that nature. And they were outdoors people. Now we're seeing a lot more of just indoor Republicans, essentially, is kind of the thing. And so they, you know, as a conservationist and as somebody who kind of gets involved with it, there's these huge budget cuts to our refuge systems and to our all these departments that are trying to come up. And so we're all kind of we're lacing our gloves up, being like, okay, like here we go. We can't strip all of these things. And the kind of conspiratorial thing of it is that it's like essentially deplete all of the resources to our public lands and our wildlife so that they could start selling this stuff off to developers. And even in like the state of Utah, it's a big Mormon population, and the governor and senators over there are trying to sell a lot of that public land to the church. And so it's like this really weird, convoluted type of thing. And it's what inspires me to kind of go to bat and fight for that type of stuff. And so but in a whole, we have good organizations, Ducks Unlimited, Delta Waterfowl, who are huge advocates, raising millions and millions of dollars for that waterfowl. And without them, we wouldn't have as robust of a population as we have, because we've seen our songbirds population decline, honestly, from house cats. House cats kill millions and millions of songbirds every year, but there's no right, and there's no organization to protect those birds like they have for ducks. And so, had it not been for Ducks Unlimited, Delta Waterfowl, and others, our duck populations wouldn't be as robust as they are now. And so it's really a great thing. And it's like out there, the culture here is just, it's nuts. I mean, it's so insanely addicting, these ducks and these geese. It's it's the best, though. I love it. It's so much fun.
Yeah. I did get an invite from a local duck hunting family who were pretty well known a few years ago, but I never really took them up on it. And I've only got some pretty average shotguns anyway, but definitely keen to have a go again in the future. That's what I've done in the past. It's just, I guess I've just leaned into more like the big game stuff. But that family, that is a guy, was, he's, I don't know if you've probably done, but over in the States, his name's Huntmate.
Okay, it
His
doesn't sound
last name's
familiar.
Get this, his last name's Morrow, right? So
Uh-huh.
his parents named him Hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was like a really high up duck foreman in the duck falling competitions. So they're like pretty well known duck family around here. They are the duck hunting aficionados, and he started waterfowl outfitting
Mhm.
operation out up by Mount Cook. So I mean, probably the most beautiful part of New Zealand. Mount Cook's our biggest mountain,
Oh,
so it's
okay.
very similar to here. Lake Country, big lakes, mountains. It's called Aoraki waterfowl, and yeah, he started his own like outfitting, and man, some of the setups he's got, like I've just been watching him on Instagram and stuff. Some of the blinds he builds, these big custom buried blinds. He's got all these different, like it's crazy, and I'm just like, man, how good's that? Like, because no one's really done the waterfowl outfitting thing here. It's always sort of just been locals, or they'll just some hunting guides will just take him up to a pond on a bloody station, but he's like, nah, I'm doing it. And it's called So Aoraki is the name of our biggest mountain, Mount Cook. That's the
Mhm.
Māori name for it. So it's called Aoraki waterfowl. You should look at it. You'll enjoy his stuff. He's a good dude. They're a good family. And yeah, it's cool that he's sort of going the outfitting route. So, guys like yourself, if you come over, you can go and hunt with him, and I think like that's pretty reasonably priced too from what I've seen. I'm like, man, good on him.
See,
But
and that's
yeah.
great, because the waterfowl guides here, it's expensive. I mean, it's
Mm,
one of the more expensive things you could do outside of elk.
mhm,
It's not uncommon. Like, so Arkansas, the state south of me, is, they call it the waterfowl duck hunting capital of the world. Um,
yeah,
it's not uncommon to spend $5,000 a day hunting ducks in some parts of that state. And that's, with a luxury lodge, and you're going out there on a side by side, and, you know, everything short of a massage, and, breakfast in the blind and all of that type of stuff. And so,
yeah.
they definitely commodified it, but it's interesting that it's not quite as popular out there. I guess when you have so much game to choose from, it's like it doesn't get funneled down. Because in Arkansas, that in some parts of it, that's the only hunting industry that there is, and it's very, very rural, low income places. So guys can see that as kind of an opportunity to actually make something of themselves, and through that, it's kind of just developed into this different scales of it. Some very, very luxurious stuff. For and like if you're 80 years old and you want to go shoot some ducks, you need to take the side by side out to the blind and have everybody do all the work for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta sit here and wait.
Yeah. So let's talk red stag. That's obviously the big one, right? The roar. I'm in some New Zealand like hunting groups, and it seems very supportive. I see people in there getting their first stags, and it's really exciting. And so it sounds like it's kind of like the elk rut where they're bugling, going crazy. But it almost seems like in New Zealand there's like a cultural element of it, like it's a part of what like it's part of society in a big way. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, in a sense, I suppose. Like I said earlier, the raw is the most hunted time of the year. It's like that's when the guys who don't hunt all year round, they come out for their one trip of the year, to hunt the raw. It's much like, say, like the bugle, because there's nothing more exciting than getting a stag right there, roaring his head off. Like it is intense. The trip we did last year, which the film is on YouTube, it's called Murphy's Law, and we shot a couple of stags. And the one I shot, again, it wasn't the biggest stag, but after 7 days, 6 days of absolute torture, I was like, I'm not passing up this office. It was a nice even, I kind of go 12, the biggest to oldest, but and anyway, I rolled him in for like probably 50 meters, and he came from like, you don't see it in the film because it was like a half an hour long exchange, but he came in from probably a couple of kilometers away. And mate Richard, who's a bow hunter, it was his first encounter with a roaring stag coming in at you. And I felt this thing, he was behind me, he was like his first time experiencing it, where it's right there. Like, and he wasn't like close. Sometimes during the roar, you can get them into literally like in your face.
Wow.
If you do everything right. And it's the sound, I think the sound they make is what gets people, because it is such an intense noise. And if it's close, it's really loud.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, it's the most exciting type of hunting that we have for that reason, because it's just, much like the elk bugle, but just picture something that sounds like a bloody lion.
Yeah.
It's 10 meters away from you going off. So a lot of people come out of the woodwork to hunt. But then on the stag side, that's the great divide is there as well. There's a huge difference between the public land stags and the ones that you see a lot of Americans coming over here and hunting on private.
Yeah.
They're two different animals. They're not.
Well, when I watch a video or something and I see those, I'll look at the stag and it's got like that big crown at the top. I'm like, oh, this is a private land thing. I'm moving on to the next one.
Yeah. Max off public land, like if you, for like around here, like a 12 pointer is sort of the benchmark. And then lengthwise, anything over like 40 inches of public land is considered like a beast.
Okay.
Like a trophy, you can get up to 14, 16 pointers on public land, depending on whether they're escapees or if they're like wild genetics. A 16 pointer would be, the fun to look for, especially if it's big and old. But then the ones that you see getting hunted on the private stations, they do not come from that line of genetics, to put it nicely.
No, it's two totally different species the way I see it, essentially. I mean, in how it's managed.
They make it accordingly as well. Their temperament and their drunkenness is very very much mixed. I've got to try and word this carefully because I don't want to offend anybody who's hunted them. But yeah, it's two different animals.
Totally.
It's two different types of trophy. It's the guys who want to come over here and just shoot a big stag, for an outfitter on a private station that's come from, different genetics, to put it nicely. And then you got the guys who want to come over and have an actual adventure on public land and find a wild red stag.
Yeah.
And, it might only be a 10 pointer, it might be whatever, but to them, that's the trophy. I'm not much of a trophy hunter. So for me, the trophy is the memory of the adventure. It's like
Right.
what went in to getting that thing and the struggle behind it. So when I look at it on the wall, I remember that trip, and I remember like the how brutal it was. Yeah. So it's two different worlds, like I say. But if you again, there's different herds. The Otago where I live, the Otago herd is sort of known as producing the biggest, best wild stags. Just because it's a different bloodline. They had what was it? Introduction. I think the Otago herd came from. I'd have to scroll up on the information. I can't remember exactly. It was from Scotland, maybe. And then there's another like the Canterbury herds, maybe from South America. There was two different places that they got introduced from. So the Otago stags are known to have all their tines, so their brows, their bays, and their trays, where a
Mhm.
lot of the Canterbury bloodlines will be missing their bay tines, so they'll only have the brow and the trays.
Oh, okay.
So naturally, they don't get up to like the 12 or 14 pointers as easily with A. So yeah, there's different bloodlines, and then obviously, like I said, you've got the Wapiti down in Fiordland, and there's also red stags down there, but they're all sort of like the hybrid Wapitis. They'll be bigger and they have a bit of a throwback, much like an elk, if you
Mhm.
find a good one. And then like the North Island stags on public land. I don't know what genetics they come from, but they're not really known as being as good. But
Mhm.
there's so many red deer in these.
Yeah.
You just never
It's
know
kind
what
of
you're
the
going to find,
it's yeah, it's the big one. And so what about the fallow deer? Are they as abundant or is it more sparse, and is it a common species to be targeted?
Yeah, so fallow, it depends, again, it depends where you are geographically. They like dry, like scrubby sort of country. So a lot of the stuff around here, like the Central Otago is going to be one of the main fallow areas. For that reason, we have the big mountains with a lot of scrub they can hide in. Um, Again, like all like outfitting stations are going to have fallow on them because they're just a trophy species. Really, really fun to hunt. Like if like right now during May is what we call the creek. It's when the fallow deer are rutting and they are very aggressive. So if you come across two fallow bucks that are rutting, you're going to see a pretty gnarly fight. Like they are very intense. But you can real fun if you can manage to break one in without destroying your throat. It's just a bit of a funny noise that they make, as
Oh,
you've probably
okay.
seen.
Yeah.
It's like almost sounds like a pig, like a noise. That's what
Huh.
they sound like. Yeah, yeah, but like
And
real deep and throaty.
you said there's a lot of them on private land, but is there still also a lot of public land opportunity for fallow as well?
Those same areas, yeah. Yeah. Like the West Coast, you won't find a fallow deer. It'd be pretty rare to find one. They just don't. It's too wet.
Mhm.
Like I said, they like the alpine. They thrive in like the alpine scrubby sort of country, like around here. Big tussock country where scrubby faces. They like to live in scrubby shit, basically.
Mhm.
So they can
Interesting.
disappear into it.
Yeah.
So it's different areas. Like and again, like a lot of the information you can find on things like if you look up a block on the Department of Conservation website, it'll tell you what species are present. Again, their information's really skew with at times because they don't really care. But um, yeah, a lot of the drier sort of areas, I guess, East Coast, South Island. There's spots in North Island they have fallow deer. There's a place called Wood Hill, which is I think it's the west coast, out from Auckland. It's like a belleted area. So they are around everywhere. There's
Mhm.
just certain areas where they seem to thrive a bit more. But yeah, they're probably our best eating deer. Like for meat, that's what I prefer to shoot. Um, Not bucks, obviously. I mean, I've shot plenty of bucks, but I probably couldn't have, just for meat. But yeah, well, so the species that we have when it comes to deer, a lot of them are only in the North Island. So you would have heard probably that we have sika deer, we have rusa, sambar. Do we have rusa, sambar? What else am I thinking of? But all of those are basically in the central North Island.
Got it.
So they sort of have what do they call it? Feral range. It's the same with the tahr. There's a feral range within the South Island where the tahr are only allowed to be. And essentially, if they're outside of that, and like Block gets word of it, they'll cull them basically.
Hmm.
It's basically, they have a similar thing. So same with all those species in the North Island. We don't get them in the South Island. But down here, there's no sika deer. They're all in that one spot in that central North Island area.
And
But
still
yeah,
public
fallow and
land
red
though.
deer. Yeah, there's definitely some on public land. But in the North Island, if you look at the map, it's not like down here. It's like there'll all be farmland everywhere because it's all flatter. And then there'll just be like what you call a forest park. So it'll just be like a chunk of mountains that have allocated as public land, and a
Hmm.
lot of it's bush country. So that's where things like the sika deer will thrive. You know, just say, okay, like this is where they stay in that forest park, and we keep them there, sort of thing. So it's just not, they don't really have the freedom. Because down here, there's so much public land, these populations can spread. Um, so yeah, I mean, fallow deer are all around the country, but they thrive. Like Central Otago is sort of again known for having sort of better fallow hunting just
Hmm.
because of the terrain and the type of environment that we have. They seem to thrive down here for some reason.
So it's interesting. It's almost like
Um,
the more north you go, a little less wild it gets because it's all a little bit more concentrated. And I'm sure it's still a great hunt and a great adventure, but it kind of takes a little bit of that edge off of it. It seems like.
yeah, there's plenty of hunting out there. It's just different country. It's different terrain. You know, the environment's different. It's like a different place, much like probably the top of the South Island would be to the bottom. Like New Zealand's super diverse for how small it is, and its
Mhm.
geographical sort of differences. Um, but yeah, we have. I mean, on a deer species, we have two populations of white-tailed deer, and it's funny because a lot of people from America come over here and we make this big deal out of like getting a whitetail because there's only two places in the whole country you can find them. And
Yeah.
a lot of the Americans are like, wow, what is like, they're only that. Like, they don't even like consider it nothing, you know. They
Yeah.
laugh at us. But Stewart Island, which is the very bottom of New Zealand,
Mhm.
so that has white-tailed deer on it. Um, and they've been there for a long time. And so for us to get a whitetail, we have to go hunt Stewart Island, and it's really difficult. It's all bush hunting, mostly. No, I like bush hunting, and they have like beach, like a lot of dudes that shop people that stop them on the beach because they come out on the beach to like find stuff to feed on. And then there's one small herd just outside of Queenstown, which is just over the hill from where I live, probably an hour away. But they're mainly on a private station, and they sort of wander onto the public land every now and again.
Mhm.
Someone snags one. Those are the only whitetail in all of New Zealand. So
Are
we have
they
a lot of
is
species, but it's sort of cut a lot of outside of red deer and fallow deer and like goats. It's it's sort of compartmentalized in a sense. Um, kind of.
is it a pretty good genetics? Do they get pretty big down there, or is it
Uh,
smaller bucks?
it's they're tiny compared to the ones in the states. They don't have enough food,
Yeah.
so they
Um,
live in the bush.
obviously a lot of the draw I think to New Zealand for most guys is the tahr
Mhm,
because it's like a goat hunt and getting a goat tag in America is no you would be lucky to do it once in your lifetime.
mhm,
And it's going to be very expensive no matter which way you dice it. So you can get into that high alpine and get that goat sheep type of hunt experience and with the tahr. And so again, it sounds like you're saying their range is obviously that high elevation type of stuff. But I guess my question here is with the tahr, um, you said we've already talked. It is accessible without heli. You got to burn that boot leather, get up high. You got to really work for it. But with those big collings, do you feel as if though the population is in jeopardy, or is there still plenty of tahr to go around?
From what I've seen, there's still plenty.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's one species that yeah, there's no real shortage of them in my opinion.
Okay.
Depending on where you grow, every valley's different, every spot's different. Yeah, it's a tricky one because then again, there's spots that are private stations. It's the same country, it's big steep mountainous country. It just happens to not be in the public sphere. It's privately owned, and there's some of these places will have thousands of them on it. It's just like I said, every spot's different. But from what I've seen, I just saw a bull having public land last weekend. Like it's not. it's hard to say that they're indicative because you see them pretty regularly.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, from your perspective, you could probably fly down here, get to wherever you want to go hunt, and hunt a bull tahr for less than, like you say, putting in for a sheep tag or whatever it is. Because I've heard how much those cost. It's really
Oh,
wild.
yeah. I mean, if you wanted to hunt sheep, you can go down to Mexico and you could do it because it's not a tag, but it is $60,000. And
yeah,
then,
that's
guys
insane.
expect a tip, right? And it's like,
Yeah,
dude.
definitely just come to New Zealand and hunt the tahr because they're pretty amazing creatures.
Mhm,
They're definitely one of our, again, when I just had the tahr foundation form probably 2 years ago, off the back of that culling that happened and stuff.
mhm,
And like, they're such amazing. And like, if you hunt them from now, pretty much from about now, like May or through winter, June, July,
mhm,
that's when like the tahr is sort of June. That's when they get their big boots. And when you're up in the mountains and one of those big bulls comes walking over, it looks like a grizzly bear walking over the mountain. And the big old ones, they just have this gait to them, this walk. And it's just like, people see, like the amount of times I've hunted them with clients and they see them and they go, man, it looks like a grizzly bear because they're just so, the mane poofs up. They're the most amazing features. And the fact that New Zealand, outside of the actual Himalaya, is like one of the places where they thrive. And then, like I said earlier, you've got these greenies who are like, yeah, let's cull them and get rid of them. It's like, what are you doing? Like, that's what these things, like especially the population of them in the Himalaya is like declining. Like they're struggling to survive. And here we have this resource in New Zealand that's thriving. It's the most amazing creature you've ever seen.
mhm.
And you get these people, oh yeah, sweet, let's just go in with a helicopter and shoot thousands of them at a time. And you wonder why the hunting population picked up a stink.
Yeah.
Um, and then like, guys like yourself, where you can come down here and hunt these things.
Mhm.
And like, how is that not an amazing resource to
Yeah.
come and have the experience of hunting tahr in New Zealand? Because it's an amazing hunt. It's amazing country, like terrain that you have to
Yeah.
be in.
Well, and we're
I
contributing to
don't
the
know.
economy, right? It's like whether it's
Yeah.
airfare or a vehicle rental, and we're shopping at the grocery stores, and we're
Mhm.
uh, it all adds up, little by little. And I think a lot of these people, these anti-hunting people, I think they're really out of touch with reality. And if we were to sit them down on a podcast, I wouldn't probably get the impression that they're happy people. At the end of the day, the ones that I've kind of talked to, it's like it's the odd characters often, because anytime you want to control what other people do with their life, I've never found those people to be like the happiest of people and the most like fulfilled in life. So, and yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right.
no, that
Yeah,
sounds,
it's like you said, like last and before, I feel like we're slowly gaining some traction in the space, in the hunting space,
mhm,
with representation, you know, like I said, valuing resources and showing that, like, hey, we have a voice and we're actually like a good chunk of the population that loves this stuff.
yeah.
Because, like you said, from their perspective, they feel it's just like a handful of people that like these animals. So who cares if we get rid of them? It's like, no, 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 no. And then obviously, like you say, like that's the industry behind it. Like the amount of money that comes into this country every year
Mhm.
from hunting, whether it be, like you said, like the lodges, the high fence, whatever, all the different outfitters, the guides, the triple down shift, camera guys like me, like and I think, and over the years, those people who are anti have been showing those numbers and been like, hey, like this isn't just some like bloody hillbillies who like an animal. Like this is,
Yeah.
so they've sort of been put in their place, and hopefully it sticks. We just need more, like I said, more like representation that's legit.
Yeah.
It's not just some random club. It's like
Yeah.
actual in parliament, like really for us because yeah. Hopefully
Well,
we don't go back that route in the future.
yeah.
But
Well, and it
yeah.
sounds like you're contributing, right? Because it's like the way that you capture it isn't just going out and it's a slaughter. There's romance and magic to it, um and it's a good representation, right?
Mm,
And
mm.
so the one thing that I was also thinking too is the goats. Is that a goat behind you from New Zealand?
Can you see it?
Yeah.
If you can see it on the camera. Yeah, that was the one I shot with my bow, so We have, what do we actually call them? Australasian goats, I suppose. They are the sort of the one exception that people will happily call a pest because they
Hmm.
breed out of control. They have no breeding season, so they just mate all year round,
Yeah.
and they explode in population very quickly. Um, so quite often, on the conservation front, you'll see guys out hunting stags and stuff, and they'll see a mob of goats and they'll just blow them, they'll just shoot them all
Yeah.
because it's that, and that's the convoluted point. It's like these deer are a resource, and then like I've hunted many goats over the years, but then they're sort of not seen as they're not given the same value for both
Hmm.
because I think they are because they're a good animal to eat because they're a lot easier to hunt. They're easier to get near. But yeah, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. Like I said, like I don't think birds will ever not be considered a steer just for that reason.
Well,
They
we
just
have a hog
explode.
we have hog problems here, down in Texas.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like you guys will pay to go do helicopter culls in on hogs because they tear up crops, they reproduce like crazy, and so it sounds kind of like a similar type of deal. Now, that goat,
yeah.
is that a big goat for the area?
That was I don't know what you'd consider like a goofy billy. I think it's over width-wise. I think the horns have to be over 30 something inches. I think that's like 32 or something. There's just so many.
Hmm.
No, from my perspective, I would never consider hanging a goat on my wall until I started bow hunting. I'd been a rifle hunter my whole life, and I've shot countless amounts of goats to either get some meat or just for pest control. And I'd never put any value on until I picked up a bow.
Hmm.
And then I was like, actually, that is a different type of hunting. It's a different level. And then, yeah, when I saw that one, I decided to put it on the wall because it was an achievement, having only been shooting a bow for a short period of time. And yeah, I'm stoked I did. But there's so many of them,
Yeah.
and you often be up in like botland or public land, and you might come across a bunch of food heads or like skeletons where alleys have just come through and just decimate, just doing pest control, and they've
Hmm.
just shot all the goats. Like I know people who literally their business is there's a whole industry here of pest control, and a lot of it is goat culling
Wow.
and pig and deer and stuff. So yeah, there's a whole nother industry on that side as well. But goats have just always universally had this yeah this sort of allure to them where they're just considered just worthless. Where it's not the case. Like yes, a big stinky billy like that, like they stink, like absolute shit, like they're horrendous. That still stinks, and it's been like fully treated. Um, so naturally, you don't really eat the billy goats. If
Right.
for meat, like if you take the meat for dog food, the dog won't even eat.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But
Crazy.
like nanny goats, like nannies and young ones, they're great. They're again, they're an underappreciated resource. You make a good goat stew or, goat back straps. I've harvested many over the years and they get eaten. It's the
Yeah.
most consumed animal in the world, I think, when you
Yeah. Yeah.
factor in
With like the
Asian
Muslim
countries and
countries and stuff, it's
India.
really, really popular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, it's another one where it's like, yes, the numbers need to be controlled because they breed like crazy. Um, but at the same time, they're a resource. It's the
Hmm.
same thing with rabbits. We have here in Central Otago, super dry country. Rabbits thrive. There's a whole industry around pest control for rabbits.
Hmm.
But, it's still a resource. I can still take my kid out and shoot a bunch
Yeah.
and make a rabbit pie or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's again, I don't know. It's always been a weird thing here with the whole pest thing.
Hmm.
And there's certain aspects of it I don't think will ever get changed. But for certain animals, like I said earlier about that birds of special interest, stuff like that, trying to
Uh,
get past is a step in the right direction, I
hmm.
think, to get more
Um,
value put on certain ones.
no, that's really interesting, and we have similar stuff like that. And so, I don't want to take up your whole day here, but I do have a couple more questions.
Okay.
With the
Okay.
abundance of resources you have, what's your personal favorite species? What's the type of hunting? Is it going up into the Himalayas and getting after them tahr, or what do you love the most, or do you have one that you kind of favor?
talking fishy or meat?
I guess just, for me, it's all about kind of the adventure, right? So it's like I like hunting whitetails, but like getting involved in the elk rut, it's like it's hard to beat. Even like hunting turkeys is super fun because it's low risk. It's just a little bit more fun. And so, do you kind of have one that you're like, man, every year I'm just super excited about this more than anything?
Well, I'll tell you what, one of our tallest animals, which again, I don't know how underappreciated it is chamois hunting or chamois.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's another European species. As in, like, the coolest animals we have. I feel like chamois are up there for me. Like, they're just the weirdest, coolest creatures you've ever seen. They're just, there's something about them that that I've just been fascinated by. And I'm still yet to see like a big chamois buck because they're just hard to find,
Hmm.
over that 9-10 inch mark. Big straight up hooks.
Yeah.
Eventually, but you can't beat stags during the roar. There's a reason why it's the most popular time of the year.
Hmm.
Like, there's no other feeling, like tucked behind a tree and you're roaring a stag in and he's just coming in and, roaring his head off. If it's cold, you've got the breath coming out. Like, you would have seen 100 videos.
Yeah.
There's just, I don't know, there's something about that feeling when they're so close you can like feel the roar, it's just, I think it's the sound. It's the sound that gets people. It's
Hmm.
just such an intense noise. Um, so I guess that would probably be up there. Again, I'm not a huge trophy hunter. I'll take something if it's big enough for the situation's right. In the past, I've only, predominantly been a meat hunter. But then, like I said, if I stumble upon Sammy, I'm not going to not pull the trigger or whatever. And then obviously, I found another world with bow hunting. So that's sort of my new angle that I'm trying, which I'm finding out pretty quickly is bloody a lot difficult.
Oh,
Not more
yeah.
just it's a different world. I don't know, mate. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I'm a
During the
bow.
like peak raw, like raw and staggering, excitement wise, nothing really compares. But
Hmm.
then at the same time, the places that you end up hunting chamois and parr are insane. I mean, you get to those similar places hunting stags, but
Hmm.
where you have to get to hunt chamois and tar, the
Yeah.
scenes that you get to see, you know, up in the tops of those, are pretty special too. So I don't know. I
Well, so that's what I was
don't know.
gonna ask you is with the chamois, they up in that sort of high alpine, like with the tar? Where do you usually find the chamois?
Yeah. Yeah. Top tops.
Yeah.
More so than tar, probably. You'll find the old bull tar down in a river. They'll come down low. They'll have a bit of a migration sort of pattern. They go up and down, they'll come
Hmm.
down in the evening, go up during the day. Then just seem to thrive up high. They just stay up there. And yeah, they're just, again, another I get anything appreciated, but Tommy hunting's pretty amazing for
Yeah.
that reason. Where it takes you, you get to go to some pretty epic spots up there. And I'd really do more of it. Like one day I'll get a good chamois. I've shot a few for meat and stuff over the years as well, which it's good to eat. Same with bull tar and tar in general. It's good eating, depending on your palate.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's don't know. Chamois they're just weird. Don't know. Same with tar, I suppose. They're the two alpine species that I feel like they're pretty special. As much as
Yeah.
you can go hunt chamois all over Europe, they're everywhere. The tar, especially, like there's not many places in the world where you can find them.
Yeah.
And if
I
you
can
can find them
imagine.
in the Himalayas, it's going to be pretty distant.
Yeah, I can imagine the scenery too. I mean, just
Mm,
my wallpaper on my computer is a New Zealand sort of mountain line because it's just like it's so hard to beat. It's just the
yeah,
prettiest, most beautiful thing you've ever seen, and it's just like, oh yeah, God's real. No question about it. Like,
yeah,
you can't
yeah.
create
It's
something like.
definitely one of those moments sitting up in the hills and looking at the sun coming up over the mountains, and like you just have to. It's those moments that you don't forget. That's what you live for. The
Yeah.
funny thing about New Zealand is growing up here because of the lack of opportunity in certain ways, and sort of like I said, that collective mindset of that cool poppy shit.
Hmm.
Naturally, a lot of young people want to leave, and they don't actually appreciate it for what it is.
Hmm.
And then you travel, you know, you go hang out in some third world countries, you go and like see what actual shit places are like.
Mm-hmm.
You soon come back to New Zealand, you're like, man, what was I? This place is paradise, especially if you're into the outdoors, you know. Like,
Yeah,
there are some rough parts in this country, like in cities and stuff. There's some rough situations for some of the citizens here, but if you're into the outdoors and you live in the mountains, like you say, hunting and stuff, there's nothing, yeah, I don't know. There's all the problems of the past that you sort of thought about the place go away when you're sitting
yeah,
up on top of that mountain, like you say, hunting tahr, and it's just scenes, you know, so I don't know. Those are the moments you live for, like I said earlier, like that's the shit you look back on the, and that's why you
yeah.
document it, so then you can look back on it.
Absolutely. No,
But
absolutely.
yeah, I answered your question earlier. I'm trying to think like what, yeah, the favorite thing to hunt. It's hard to say. It's all epic. Hunting in general, is just epic. You know,
Yeah.
like I said, nothing. I said that to my mate Richard. We're out on last weekend. You know, we put one of the big pack missing in, big heavy packs. You know, we did an overnighter in there. We didn't shoot anything. We found a few good stags and stuff for the future. Got back to the car. Absolutely cooked. You know, we're both sort of almost 40, so we sort of feel it a bit more. And I just said to him, I was like, epic though, eh? He's like, yeah. He's like, there's nothing bad comes from it. Like, you just don't struggle through it. It's the most amazing experience. And you don't even see anything. It's like, I don't know,
Right.
nothing compares. There's no other hobby or thing I've done in my life that excites me as much as hunting.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the one thing that's like continually always like drawn me back, or like the thing I still get excited about, you know, like no matter what it is. You know, just going for a walk like that and scouting a spot or whatever. Don't know. It's an amazing pastime, I guess you call it.
No, and I look, I'm right there with you. I got it just as bad, and I think it's, it's really interesting because I'm reminded that it's like we're a hunt like that. We're pushing ourselves to our limits. We're testing our own limits, and this has been the type of thing that philosophers hundreds of years ago in Greece and stuff, they wrote about this same type of thing. This is a part of the human condition to see what we're made of, to what we can really push ourselves to, and some I take it probably too far sometimes, right? Like I find myself in situations where I'm like, oh shit, I need to maybe back out here for a second because it's getting a little Western.
Yeah.
But I would much rather go to that limit than to have never pushed at all. I couldn't imagine living a life. It just couldn't do it, Yeah, I have
We
to
talked
push it.
about that. Yeah, we talked about that on the weekend about um, that exact thing, you know, like how many people go through life not knowing what they're capable of
Hmm.
physically or mentally. I've had some hunts over the years where I have literally pushed myself to like death's door, like where I'm like, okay, get up with, you know, crazy amounts of weight, walk 10 meters, sit down, you know, like I'm like dragging myself to get back to the point where I'm thinking about pushing the button on the old
Oh yeah, on the
beacon, you know.
yeah.
But I've pushed through it and I've got back and all was good. And like how
Hmm.
many people grow up in a city or in any place really and never put themselves to that limit
Hmm.
to find what they're capable of. So then when they are in a situation that's difficult, they'll be like, oh, okay, like I've got this. This is only like 20% of what I'm capable of.
Right.
We actually said that on that video from last weekend, you know, like, what's his name? Old, David Goggins. He's got that famous quote. He's like, most people give up at 40%. And obviously we joked about it as we do. Whatever we said something about giving up 25, but it's so true. Because
Hmm.
I've had times where I've been like, thought I was picked. And then I'm like, oh, actually, look, I just did 60% more to get back and I'm fine. Like, down the
Right.
limit, you know? Yeah. And that's the thing. I've said that to other guys that I know who've got into hunting, saying like, oh, they want to get into it. And, you know, I'm like, well, you got to go, you've got to go on that first deer. You've got to go through all the shit that everyone sort of to get it.
Hmm.
Whether it's like one mate that got into it, and yeah, it's like go do 10 missions on public land before you even consider, you know, going to shoot your first deer on on private or whatever it might be, you know, however, or get your mate to take you to the spot.
Hmm.
because everyone does it, you get out there and that's part of the journey. It's a personal growth journey
Mm-hmm.
as well as like the hunting. It's not like, get your gun license, buy a gun, shoot the thing, done.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
I
no,
take it a bit too,
absolutely. Well, and so
maybe
then
spiritually.
I love to hear that because I mean we're cut from the same cloth in that regard. It's
Hmm.
it's the limits and pushing ourselves, and it's great to connect with other guys who think that same way because truth be told, my part of the country, hunting's pretty easy, right? It's not
Hmm.
the backcountry stuff, and I modulate the intensity because we do have some areas out here where we can go into the backcountry and live off of our back and stuff, and it's so unnecessary because there's great deer not too far from everywhere, but it's what I have to do to make the experience worth it for me. And the last question I have for you here is, with New Zealand sort of being such a dream destination for so many guys, especially from America, do you have places that you look at being like, oh man, I'd really love to hunt here or do that? Or do you feel like your cup is just so full in New Zealand, it's not really necessary?
No, definitely not. And you'll find the only time Kiwis are willing to pay to go hunting is when they go somewhere else. They'll
Yeah.
go to the States and outfit it to hunt whatever, some species that we don't have. Whitetail, like a good whitetail would be high on my list. It's just
Hmm.
because they're not available here. You've got that field on Stewart Island, but you're not going to get, what that's worthy of what you guys would think is a good trophy. That would be cool. We have some connections in the States just through clients and stuff who are like, man, come over, like, we'll get on. But it's at this stage of life and you have young kids, there's a reason why I don't do a lot of traveling. It was the same with the photography career. You get the opportunities and you turn them down because I'm like, no, my priorities, but it's for them being a dad. So
Hmm.
it's like the traveling will come again. It's just you've got to take the season of life that you're dealt at the moment. That's my priority. So I'm not doing as much traveling. Obviously, we go hunting for, you know, a week here or whatever, weekends and stuff, but overseas travel isn't really happening much. But yeah, I think like a whitetail would be pretty cool. Anything that we can't access here,
Hmm.
naturally, why a lot of hunters want to come here to hunt red deer because they don't have them there. It's like it's just natural inclination to just want the thing you don't have.
Right. Totally.
It's human
Totally.
nature, I think. So one day I'll come over there and definitely do like a whitetail hunt or something. But then it's the same with like heaps of the like I guess Aussie guys and stuff that go over there and do the big same thing, like wilderness missions for elk and stuff. I mean, what do you want to want? If you're a hunter, you just want to. It's about the mission for me. It's about the
Yeah.
adventure. Like
Hmm.
at the end of the day, the given something's a bonus. That's always been my mindset. Same with fly fishing. I've always had the saying, "No time on the river is wasted time."
Yeah.
That some old geezer told me years ago. And it's like it, the mental aspect of fly fishing is a lot more important than the actual catching. If you catch something, it's a bonus. And I've always had that with hunting as well. It's like being out there is the privilege and the is what I love. And if I shoot something, then it's the bonus. I don't
Hmm.
know. Everyone's got a different mindset, but yeah, there's definitely things like I have no interest. I'm not a huge trophy hunter. I'm not interested in going to like Mexico and shooting a bloody something, because
Right.
it'd be never on, or I never really want to do it. But there is certain species that stand out in like things like a whitetail, would be pretty up there. Like
The,
elk, we've got massive elk here that we can hunt. It's all on private. They all come from a place down south. So you could do it in New Zealand, and people do. They hunt elk while they're here in
hmm.
Stag. But so if I was going to do it, it would have to be like public land. Do you know Adam Green?
What's that?
You know of a guy called Adam Green, sorry,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
bow hunter? You see
Yeah.
some of the missions he goes on, in the
He's
States.
nuts. He's
And I'm
nuts.
like, yeah, that's where it's at. Like if
Yeah.
you're going to go in another country, like the way he does it,
Is he an
it's
Aussie
definitely
or is
what
he a
interests
Kiwi?
me. He's Australian.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
He comes over here to hunt regularly there,
Yeah. I mean, because
and he
that's
does it
not
the right
a
way.
crazy travel, Australia to New Zealand. What is that? 5, 6 hours?
it's 3 hours minute,
Right.
not
Yeah.
even 3. I can
Yeah.
fly from If I could fly from Queenstown or Auckland to Melbourne in under 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's pretty close. Yeah.
That's
There's not a lot of hunting in the northern part of Australia, so
mhm.
Queensland, which is pretty much a lot of the top part of it, and then Northern Territory. Northern Territory, you can go and hunt the water buffalo and like different stuff. But
Mhm.
Queensland is really strict on hunting. It's only on private land in Queensland. And that's where I lived when I lived there. So I was
Yeah.
like, well,
You gotta
if I'm
pay to play.
never paying to hunt, and then I'm like, I'm just not even bother.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they've got deer there all over their national park or whatever they call their public land, and they pay people to go in and shoot them to get rid of them. They don't let people hunt it. I'm like, this is so backwards.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never really ventured into it while I was over there because it was just the barrier to entry. It was too high. But
Mhm.
yeah, people like Adam Greentree, he comes over here to hunt every year, does a mission. He does it right. You know, just like I said, he just gets a car or whatever. You think he might even own one. He just lives here.
Yeah.
He just goes and walks into the public land and tries. I think he got a decent stag here this year. So yeah, one
Well,
day.
I
Like
like
I
I said,
said,
I
we've got
definitely
lots of connections in the States, but it's just about getting there and doing it, you know.
yeah. Well, like I said, New Zealand is very, very high on my list. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this time next year I'm out there. It's that close for me. So, I'm really glad I was able to connect with you. I'll probably be bugging you, be like, "Hey, I'm going to be in Queenstown in 2 months. Let's you grab a burger or something," and
Calm down.
and all that. And so, for those people who want to connect with you, it's Lennon Bright Photography on Instagram.
It's just my name on Instagram for
Okay, just
hunting
Lennon Bright.
stuff. It's just
Yeah,
Lennon Bright.
and
I
then
have a lot of other pages and stuff.
okay, is there anything else you want to shout out?
Well, we have another one's called Uber Outdoors. That's sort of our joint venture. That's where we do the filming, and we put a lot of like our content. So we're doing YouTube videos as well. So we put stuff up on there, like Fallow Outdoors on YouTube and on Instagram.
Hmm.
And like I said, that's me and a couple of mates. Um, that's sort of our new, putting a lot of effort into that.
Hmm.
Um, because that's sort of the brand that we want to do things under in the future.
Yeah.
Just to give it, it's just a bit easier having a brand. We can branch out to different things. You know, it's not my name. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's about it. And that's the thing. Like I say to everybody when it comes to hunting in New Zealand, it's just like my response is always just like, come on down.
Hmm.
Because there is a ton of public land. Don't let any salty TVs or anyone else tell you anything different. Like
Hmm.
it's open. It's open for every type of hunting, whether it be, like I say, outfitting, the numerous mini outfitters. Personally, my wife works for one called Glendine Hunting and Fishing.
Hmm.
And I do a bit of work for them as well, filming and stuff. They're based just here. I mean, their setup's pretty epic because they actually own the station that is between the two lakes. So we have Lake Hawea and Lake Wanaka, and their whole station is sort of like a peninsula between the two.
Oh
So it
wow.
doesn't matter where you are on the book. It's a big mountainous country, you know, they've got all sorts, but they've just got a really good setup. So you've got that type of thing, or you've got, you know, like you say, rent a car and a spot on the map that says it's public land and walk into it and you'll find something. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty sure even for non-residents, you know, you just go on the Department of Conservation website, fill in a couple of details, and it emails you a permit. It lasts 3 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of pointless because you'll never see a dock worker or anything out on the land. Like, it's the system's it's really chill. You
Yeah.
can find yourself a big stag or a tahr or a Tommy or 1,000 goats, whatever you want, really.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Well, Lennon, hey, thank you so much, man. It was great chatting with you. We had a nice long conversation, and I learned a lot. I have a feeling like some of my American audience is going to learn a lot, and it was great. Like I said, connecting with you, man. I consider you a friend, and I definitely want to connect when I get out there, and I really appreciate your time.
Definitely, bro. That's a word that you use a lot. Thank you. People can say it so much, but yeah, and like, that's the thing. Most people in New Zealand are nice. They're
Hmm.
friendly. It's a friendly country with welcome people. You know, my ethos is always be a good representative of your nation and your people. So when people like where I live is a tourist town.
Hmm.
even, outside of hunting, just tourists in general. And I try and portray their energy, oh, how are you finding your trip? And just be welcoming, because
Right.
that's the vibe that I want to put out. Same with hunting, it's like, it's booked it, come and check it out. Like, you'll love it.
Yeah.
And there's many people that have done that, and then next minute they're like, there's a reason why the population's growing. I don't think much of it's like hunting population, but yeah, it's an amazing place. And I implore anybody to come down and check it out, because my you know my perspective of the place has changed a lot since traveling around the world, and seeing different cultures and then coming back here. I
Mhm.
appreciate it big time, and I love to share it with other people. So yeah, if anybody wants to come down here and needs intel, again, I don't really put it out on public forums, but if someone messages me, I give them some good intel on what it is.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
an Aussie guy come down to hunt the raw, and he had a local block. Yes, so I said, yeah, go here. And all I heard back was this, and it's just like a big 12 pointer. Like, sweet mate. So,
Yeah.
but no, I appreciate you having me on.